All right. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. It's been a long time since we've done a 6-on-6. In fact, I think it's been about a month or so, and our last guest is actually on this show as well. So you're on back-to-back episodes. Seth, how does it feel?
Amazing.
Wow, such an enthusiastic response.
What an emotion.
It's emotional for you?
It was hard for me to put together the thoughts running through my head right now of being on here back-to-back episodes.
I see you're wearing your favorite Dark Zero pink hoodie. I think that's very nice of you to represent the brand of the multiple land runner-ups. So
yeah.
With that said, we have 4 people on the guests. 3 of them have been on, or 3 guests on the show. We've had 3 of them on here before. We have a new face in Meligeni. If you watch Brazil or LATM Rainbow Six, you will know he is one of the premier faces of that region. We'll start with, in order of the people who are on your webcams on your screen, we have Seth, aka Supr, joining us from North America. You might know him from the Sonics. They made their run through the Six Invitational qualifiers as the Super Sonics as they tinkered with a new roster. Right next to him is Meli. You'll know him as one of the main voices of Rainbow Six LATAM / Rainbow Six Brazil. He's been in the scene for eternity, well-loved, well-liked. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say a single bad thing about him. Right next to him is another guy who I don't think I've heard anybody say anything bad about. And that's one of the most lovable figures from Australia, none other than Dizzle, the coach of Fnatic. And then last but not least, we have my mom's boyfriend, aka Fabian, who plenty of people have said bad things about. So hopefully all of you are going to enjoy our guests today. I am very excited. It was important to me to be able to get everybody back on for the pre-SI show. There is no Troy today because he is busy preparing for Six Invitational. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to get 4 players that will not be, or 4 players or 4 coaches or 4 casters who will not be competing in the event. We'll start with Supr, and then we'll work our way across the various regions and talk about their thoughts on the Six Invitational and how their regions are going to do. Supr, there are going to be 5 teams from North America competing, 4 of which are from the US division, 1 of which is from the Canada division. And I think Altiora is a pretty good starting point given the news that came out yesterday about their roster. So the floor is yours if you want to discuss what's going on with NA and what you think the expectations are in regards to North America and how they'll do at the Six Invitational.
I think looking at NA, I think TSM is clearly the best team right now. If I were to rank them, I would probably say TSM is first. And in my opinion, I think they're maybe the invitational favorite right now. And then I'd say there's a gap between TSM and then SSG and Dark Zero, who I'd kind of group together right now. Obviously, Dark Zero's probably performed a little better over the past year, but SSG historically performs a little bit better on land. And then I probably put another gap and say OXG's kind of solidified in that 4th spot. And then a huge gap and Altiora. Obviously, them qualifying was pretty surprising. Personally, I think the 4 NAL teams make it out of the group stage. Obviously, 16 teams make it out. But I think Altiora is probably one of the teams that doesn't make it out, just from what I've heard of teams who have scrimmed them. Because I've asked a little bit about them because obviously I didn't know much, and from speaking to some of the other pro teams, Altiora has not been able to I guess you could say hang in terms of scrims and stuff like that. So I mean, with that being said, there's obviously probably not a lot of pressure on them because nobody expects anything from them. And the situation they're in now where they're going out there and playing and they know they're already coming back to not even being on a team, basically. That could either motivate you to do some crazy stuff, or maybe obviously could be a little shattering to your mental. So I think the top 3 NA are probably contenders for the top 4 to 6. And I think OXG will make it out of groups, but I don't expect much from them. And Altiora, I would be surprised if they made it out of groups personally.
Now, the one question I have about Altiora for you is that they had this kind of miracle run through the qualifiers. The landscape of NAL has been a little rocky. the last couple months. Obviously, Tempo and E United both pulled out. The rosters did not end up staying together. So not only do you lose those org representations, but you also lose the team too. And those players decide to go elsewhere. Your team in particular, when you were on the show last time, you had talked about how 4 of your 5 players, with the exception of you, all got removed from the squad, and that's what birthed the Supersonics. Now, obviously, it's kind of hard for you to make a run through and qualify as the favorites when you're still working with a new roster. DG was the odds-on favorite. Everybody thought that they were going to be able to burn through. And then they ended up having a pretty brutal loss to Beast Coast, in which I think a lot of people can agree that it was more Disrupt throwing the game than Beast Coast rising to the occasion. Altiora goes through this miracle run. The news that broke yesterday or the day before, I can't remember the specific day, I think it was yesterday, basically saying that the organization would not be maintaining this roster past the Six Invitational, as both the US divisions and the Canada division are going to be merging together. Do you think that that's going to work as a motivating or demotivating factor, or do you think it'll have much of an impact on their performance at SI?
It's hard to know. I think that affects different people different ways. Like for some people, if you go into something and you just know you're coming back to like nothing basically, and you feel like screwed over, you might just be like, what's the point? Like I'm getting screwed over by however they see it, the org or Ubisoft or whatever it may be. And that may be demotivating. And then obviously for others, it could just be, like, screw these guys and they're just going to do everything they can. I think the problem with them is just like, even if they are in that mode of just like, screw it, like we're going to do everything we can, I just don't think they're honestly good enough. They have 2 players on their team who really stood out in the invitational qualifiers, which were Eska and Spirits. But again, their run through the qualifier, they played no pro teams. They played Rent Free, who's, maybe in Pro League. And then they played Beast Coast, who again, maybe in Pro League, but those were 2 Challenger League teams. And obviously stepping up from playing like Mirage and maybe like the high level, low level PLCL teams to going into Invite where you're, supposedly playing the other 20 best teams in the world. That's like another level of competition that I just don't think they can play on, regardless of like how motivated or demotivated they may be. I don't really think it will matter.
Now we'll move towards Brazil, and not just Brazil, but also Latin America, though all of your teams are from Brazil, which, I mean, Meli, that shouldn't really surprise you as somebody who is familiar with the region, as Brazil is the most established part of all of South and Latin America now that it's all been kind of merged together. Latin America, and Brazil in particular, has the distinction of 6 teams representing the region. You have the largest representation of any region at the Six Invitational. You have the usual big 4 that we talk about quite often in FaZe Clan, Team Liquid, Ninjas in Pajamas, and MIBR. But you've also got Team 1, who have had an incredible year, and Furia, who managed to make it in through the qualifiers. What are your general thoughts on Latin America? Is this LATAM's year, given how close NIP came last year? And what are you expecting out of both Team 1 and Furia, given the seasons that they've had?
Hello, everyone. I want to start with Furia because they almost got relegated, and now they are competing in the Invitational. So it's pretty crazy, the journey from those guys. And Furia, I think they are going to have a really good lesson in this tournament, but I don't know if this is the right moment for them to make it to the finals, to the playoffs. They are the underdog for sure. But talking about Team 1, they are really young, and most of the times they don't try. How can I say that? Actually, they sometimes you see that they can't find the way to correct their mistakes in the game. Sometimes, they get too nervous. They do some mistake that we know that it's pretty silly for them. They are really, really good team. I think they will get some nervous in the first matches, but in the final they will have a chance to go to the playoffs. Talking about MRBR, they just won the BR6, so they are pretty confident. Cameraman it's now on MRBR, and they had the chance to get so much knowledge from him. I talked to him a lot, and I played sometimes with him. And the information in the game that he can pass to the teammates, it's amazing. He has so much experience to give, and MIBR have a pretty good chance to make it to the playoffs too. Liquid and Ninjas and Pajamas are the top two teams right now, you know. Especially because NIP was the second place in the last year. They are pretty strong right now. We haven't seen those teams playing in these last months because we have the finals from BR6 in December, so we have only the chance to see Furia playing. But FaZe, I don't know, man. FaZe, the individuals, you know, talking about every single player, they're really good. They are amazing players, but I don't know how to expect they are playing like a team in this invitational. I don't know, man. FaZe, if FaZe play as a team, if you know what I mean, they could be one of the best teams in the invitational too. But every year we are, of course, really confident about our teams, but they never get to the finals. Just one team or two. Sometimes it's really hard to predict, you know.
Yeah. Do you think a team like NIP goes in with expectations too high on themselves? Because I mean, you look at Liquid and NIP, as you said, would be the two favorites. Obviously, Liquid is always in that conversation, though Liquid's run on LAN and their results on LAN has always been inconsistent. NIP have looked pretty good. Do you think going in that NIP are going to live up to those expectations? Do you expect NIP or Liquid to be one of the two best teams? Or do you think like a team like MIBR, who looks pretty hungry, can easily topple them and make it to the finals and possibly even win?
Yeah, like I said, we always say that the top two teams is always going to be the Liquid and NIP before the matches, you know. MIBR, yes, for sure, they are hungry for to show how they are getting better and better, and especially with cameraman in the team. I think this is the best line they ever had in the MIBR. But I don't know, man. Team 1 could be the one that we need to watch in the invitational, because those kids are insane, you know. The skills from every single player can be really amazing to see. If it's like FaZe, if they play as a team, it's in the invitational, I think they can be our favorite for this moment.
It'll be interesting to watch for me, because I mean, FaZe has gone through so many roster moves, and I mean, even recently, what was it? Their manager tweeted out that they wouldn't be able to boot camp properly, that they might not be able to be prepared in time, which I imagine we're going to see a lot of teams be unable to properly boot camp due to travel restrictions and health and safety precautions, etc. Next up,
it's pretty hard right now in Brazil, you know, so you could imagine.
I will say, if all members of every 20 teams are able to make it there, including their staff, then I will buy a lot of lottery tickets, because it will be an Absolutely incredible feat and stroke of luck. So
Hope
next up, we have Dizzle from APAC. Now, you tend to be in a region that you end up speaking for quite often. Your region's obviously been carved up quite a bit. You got Cloud9 there. You got Giants Gaming there. You got Wildcard, and you got Cyclops. This is going to be the very first Six Invitational that you're not going to be present at. I guess before we start talking about the teams, how did it feel for you to not qualify? And how has the year for Fnatic gone so far? Because it hasn't exactly been what you'd expected going into it.
I mean, yeah, like, call a spade. The year's been dreadful. Like, a lot of people are a lot worse off, you know. We've got a really good org backing us. It's been tough. They're super understanding. It didn't go as planned. But all in all, with the standards that we hold ourselves at, with the expectations that we had, with the plans that we had for our team for Rainbow Six for APAC, it's fallen short, you know, by a milestone on every single metric. It's a bittersweet thing to be missing this SI. Obviously, we're missing it, but you know, coming from the country that we're in, it's also exceptionally difficult to be attending with the circumstances around the globe. So I think, yeah, all in all, like, super grateful to like Ubi and ESL and being as accommodating and understanding as they have been. You know, a lot of people don't know, but our move and everything planned was 18 months in advance. It wasn't something that happened in an off season. So, you know, timing was a little unfortunate. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think we'll go down in history as, you know, the most unfavorable competitive circumstances in the history of Rainbow we've had to play through this year. The team survived. Now we're just hoping that 2021 is going to be better. If we can just get the world sorted out.
That's the hope, right? The hope is that we can start to get this underway. I know in North America, we want to get a LAN league underway. I think everybody wants to have more events as well. And it's been a year. It's crazy to think we haven't had a proper event, a proper international event in a year. That's mind blowing. So, but you've got 4 teams from APAC. You do have an Australian representative in Wildcard. You've actually got a pretty nice cross section of APAC. You got a team from Singapore, you got a team from Korea, you got a team from Japan, you got a team from Australia. Going in, Cloud9 had a bit of a slump over the last year and a half. They seem to be in really good shape. Norarengo has taken a major step back. Fnatic is obviously out of the conversation. Giants look really good as well. How much of this do you think is going to translate to international competition? And do you honestly believe that any of these 4 APAC teams have a legitimate shot at finishing in the top 4 and possibly even winning the Six Invitational?
So I think in terms of their success, I think APAC has a strong chance to make it out of groups, all 4 of them, purely on the back of the new best of 1 format. APAC is generally not a region you want to play in a best of 1, because it's very hard to plan for that opponent in that amount of time, and I assure you APAC are likely not planning for you. So it's really going to be about, I think, for the veterans to be able to I guess understand and pay credence to how they decide to play the game, and for the younger teams that are attending the Six Invitational for the first time is to have the maturity and foresight to not get roped into how APAC want to play the game. So I think the best of 1 format really suits APAC as a group stage. So there's strong potential that all 4 can come out. I think Wildcard will have the most difficulty, not based on them specifically, but they aren't as unorthodox as some of the others can be. And I think they have, in terms of making out of groups, there's some stronger teams for that sort of bottom 4 position in Group B. But I think they have a strong chance of making it out of groups, all 4 of them. Top 4 and winning. I think, like you touched on before, the boot camps are going to be a big part. A lot of our success, and nearly every Six Invitational and anything we've attended, has purely been on the back of boot camps. We go to Europe usually for about 2 weeks every time, and we scrim 2 to 3 times a day against like tier 1 teams exclusively, you know, with the likes of Fabian and whatnot. So we get our asses kicked for 2 weeks straight until we finally start to piece things together in the last few days before we like sort of make our move out. And then, we do some scrims before the event. So I think that's where APAC will struggle the most, is being able to sort of brush up on their fundamentals and sort of put together their game plan, and then come out really strongly in a best of 3, understanding things in the North American and European meta, how they've been played, new tactics that have been developed. There's a lot of things that we learn when we go to Europe and then sort of figure out how to counter it, how teams play, adapt. So we honestly, the 2 weeks we spend in Europe boot camping is considered like months in advance of what we get in APAC. So I think that's really going to hurt the APAC teams, is not having the ability to do that. So I think it's going to be really tough for them to make top 4. I think C9 and Giants can definitely make top 8, but to go back to back in BO3s when it gets to the really tight end, I think it's going to be really tough for them, purely just on the lack of quality scrimming experience we have in APAC compared to Europe, as well as the sheer amount. Like, you can get a T2 scrim in an instant in Europe if you want to do 3 scrims a day. So I think that's really going to hurt APAC.
There will obviously be some benefits of APAC playing international competition, though. There is always a step forward that APAC seems to make when they get to play in teams that are in North America, Europe, and Latin America, obviously, because APAC unfortunately does tend to seem to be the most isolated geographically, and because of that, you always got to struggle to play games with high ping. I mean, I know you've also spoken about when Fnatic wants to scrim teams from Korea and Japan, not even other regions, still technically your same region, when Fnatic was based out of Australia, what you had to deal with in regards to the ping. So it will be interesting to see what experience they'll be able to get, though it will be a best of 1 format. So obviously unpredictability tends to be the name of the game. So our final person to speak with and the final region to mention is Europe. And Fabian, your old team G2 will be present, along with a litany and possibly the favorites in the entire tournament, which would likely be BDS. You've got BDS, you've got G2 going, you've got Virtus Pro going, you've got Mkers going, and you've got Team Empire going. Now, when you look at these 5 teams that are going to be representing Europe, what are your immediate thoughts? And do you think, just like every other region, that EU has a shot at winning SI?
No, EU is going to win the SI. I know that for a fact. BDS is going to take that. I can't allow G2 to take it because, as I spoke about earlier, I want to have the highest invitational attending to win ratio. So I can't have SSG win it, and I can't have G2 win it. And other than that, I don't really care. But I think that we have top contenders from Europe. Both BDS and G2 have shown themselves to be really strong. I mean, I can't really say that one team is worse than the others when it comes to the rest of them either, because both Empire and Virtus Pro have performed in EUL. And we have, like, my individual team with Vitality, we've been struggling against them both in practice and in official matches. So hard for me to say, and now we've taken a break since the qualifiers. We haven't even practiced once since then. So I don't know, like, their recent form. But I suspect that EU is going to have all of their teams come out of the group stages. Maybe not Mkers, but you never know. I mean, they slaughtered their way through the qualifiers. If they can bring that same form to LAN, anything can happen. But playing LAN is a different game, and a team that's never really been on any sort of pressure moment. I mean, you look at them in the qualifiers, they are not the team that had the pressure on them. Every single EUL team that they played had the pressure to go to invitationals. Nobody expected them to go. So we'll see when they come there, but I don't fancy their chances of going super far. Every other team can, in my mind, make it top 4 without problems.
You think all of the EU teams can make top 4? I think that's pretty high praise. Do you foresee Mkers going out in groups? Because Mkers is one of the fascinating stories that came through here, and it was not without controversy. Obviously, Mkers' run through the SI quals caused a significant amount of firestorm on social media, and there were accusations thrown around, there were harsh words thrown around, it incensed the entire Italian community, etc. Going into this event, you talked about pressure. How much pressure do you now think there is on the shoulders of Mkers to make it out of the group stages?
I mean, they have a lot of things to prove, right? If they want to prove the people that doubted them on social media wrong, they should perform. But if they go out in groups and they don't win a single best of 1, well, there's going to be more fire or more smoke from that, it'll fire, and people are going to start looking into it even more than they already are. I mean, I'm not involved. I don't really give a crap. If people think they cheat, let them. I haven't seen anything of them in like proper proof that they have, so I'm not going to even mention it. But I don't think that they have too much pressure. Like, they have the pressure to prove the doubters wrong, but they still, at the same time, they're coming into the event with nobody having the expectations on them. So it's like maybe they put pressure on themselves to the degree where they fall for it.
Could be. I mean, I feel like the situation involving Mkers is eerily similar to what we saw at Fours at the Raleigh Major, when Fours made it all the way through and made that miracle run and managed to basically go from obscurity. Next thing you know, they're in the Raleigh Major. Next thing you know, they're in the Final Four. You know, and you had some very interesting words for the opponents of Fours at the time.
They played like literally fucking shit. However, I don't think that they're the same story, because Forza at that time was known to the EUL teams, or well, Pro League teams at that point in Europe. We knew who they were. We had practiced them, and people had also seen them in the Russian league. Now we're seeing a completely new team with 1 month of practice making it to invitationals. I don't know what to make of that, but it's not the same story.
So we'll go back to you, Supr, in that case, and we'll talk broadly about SI, because the one thing that all four of you have is that you all, I think, have a great eye on the competitive scene as a whole. You're not just experts on your select regions, you're also experts on what goes on outside of your borders. Supr, when you look at the landscape of the SI, you gave us your thoughts on NA. But when you look at all of the teams that are going to be attending, do you have any thoughts or immediate predictions as to, yeah, this team is for sure going to go out in groups. Yeah, these teams are for sure going to make it to the top 8, top 4, etc.
Well, you know, we haven't seen too much with this like new meta, which is going to be faster. I mean, obviously we had the finals, but I think outside of maybe like Dark Zero, to be honest, I think a lot of teams are trying to hide stuff. You know, we saw SSG, for instance, have Troy playing Ash and Fultz playing Thermite, you know.
It's very normal.
But, yeah. In my opinion, I think, like, the teams that are more adaptable and, like, more gun skill heavy, like the G2s, like the TSMs, and, you know, obviously SSG is known for being very adaptable. I feel like those are and like NIP, extremely strong, you know, gun skill team. Like, I feel like this kind of meta plays more into their favor. To me, like, I look at a team like BDS and they perform really well, but I think like G2, I would 100% take G2 to like outplace them going into the Invitational, just based off of how I think the game plays out right now. I just think that it really is in their like wheelhouse, and you know, TSM is like kind of similar to them in their roster construction, and it's where it's like, you know, Geo, for instance, plays hard breach for TSM, but I think everybody says Geo's, you know, kind of too good to be playing hard breach, where it's like all 5 players on their team can outgun any of your 5 players, and I just think that's going to like. I like, we don't know how the brackets go because of the like groups, you know, I don't know how they're going to seed the brackets, but I would like, I'm thinking like a TSM kind of G2 final would be like, I think probably the 2 best teams going into it in terms of how I think the play style comes out.
Meli, would you agree with that? Do you think the G2 TSM is the best final we can have? Do you think there'll be any upsets?
I completely disagree. I'm joking. No, actually, maybe we can see that in this invitational. This meta is going to be more aggressive for sure, and we saw that in D2 with some matches, especially in the final decision against BDS. Of EU League finals that I have the opportunity to cast. This game was really cool because I like this style of game. But I think NIP have the chance to be there again because of that too. TSM, for me, it's the best team of NA. To be honest, I don't like to watch too much the NA because when you see the games, sometimes I think they are at the same level because they are always getting to the third map. They are always getting to the overtimes too slow for me to catch because I like more aggressive, more crazy games. But I'm not saying that they are not they are not good teams. Actually, I think they are they are the most technical teams that I see in this moment right now. But like Supr was saying, the velocity, the speed of the game, the aggressive of this new meta, maybe it's going to be an advantage for D2, TSM, teams like NIP. But it's something like that, you know. And I like that because, like I said, I always try to watch the most aggressive and crazy games in the Rainbow Six scene. So this invitational is gonna be really great to watch and cast, of course.
Dizzle, your thoughts on the general competitive nature of SI? Any teams you think are going to go out right away, and any teams that you think are a lock to make it into the semifinals, potentially finals?
Like I said, the group stage, the BO1 sort of make it a bit scary, right? I think for a lot of teams, 1 or 2 upsets from some of the perceived weaker teams can really ruffle a few feathers. I think it should be in the group stages, the ones generally with sort of less experience are likely to drop off. I think, yeah, the G2 are probably the favourites going into the competition. I think they are the best that Europe has to offer. I think BDS is a super strong team, but they require, you know, certain players to perform consistently, constantly. Which I think is we saw in EUL, right? In the finals, it just dropped off in a BO5. I think TSM, yeah, it suits their play style. From I obviously we don't have a lot of contact with NA, and we haven't seen a lot of international competition. But understanding how TSM play, I think it's definitely an opportunity. But I think this could also be LATM's best chance with the meta as well that they've had. Obviously, NIP had a really strong run last year. But I think Ninjas or maybe even Team Liquid could be a bit of a dark horse, I think, with the meta. And I think the big thing that is going to hurt the Latin American team is they're not going to have a lot of that passion and crowd atmosphere to feed off of, which makes way for more of the G2s and TSMs and a little bit more experience to probably lead the way, without having that sort of crowd environment.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird scenario for everybody, given the fact there is no crowd, right? I mean, we don't know the plans yet. Will there even be a stage? Will it be in an empty arena? You know, ESL Katowice did that, where they basically played in an empty arena. Or is it going to be like group stages where they're just playing in a booth? And it's, you know, it's very different. It's a very different setup, right?
That alleviates like some of the pressure, I think, on people who aren't as experienced, not having a crowd or potentially not playing on a stage in front of people. So that could actually benefit some of the like teams that maybe haven't been to as many LAN events and stuff like that.
Fabian, would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would have been happy if I could attend the LAN and it would be in Brazil without the crowd, because going to Brazil with the crowd, that's not very fun stuff, I can tell you that much.
I found it to be quite enjoyable.
I've received 1 or 2 or 3 or
they
like
love you, man. They love
100 threats to my life and everyone around me and everything I hold dear. But yeah, it definitely is going to take the pressure off some people. It would obviously have been a perk for the European teams for the first time having invitationals in Europe, obviously. So having a crowd would have been good for us. But it's hard to say. I think that the pressure is going to be on themselves as well. So it's hard to say what's going to happen with it. The more experienced teams are probably, even if you have the less experienced team having no pressure from the crowd, they are going to put pressure on themselves, which also the more like senior teams will do as well. But they are also more used to that pressure on themselves, so they might be able to control it better. It's such a, it could be literally either way.
When you look at the meta, and this is something that we're going to touch on in the next conversation point, because I mean, the meta obviously just got massively upheaved, and the game is faster on every single level. Every single region's qualifiers showed teams using the clock far more efficiently than before. When you look at teams like Europe, everybody here seems to think that G2 is the best team coming out of Europe. A lot of people look at BDS. You led off with the fabled Caliber Jacob line, BDS takes it. Was there any truth behind that? Do you think that BDS is the best team coming out of Europe, or do you agree with the other three panelists who all said that G2 seems to be the team that's going to thrive the best in this meta, have a ton of experience, and probably be the best shot for Europe at winning the championship?
I mean, if I look at friendships, I hope that G2 wins it, obviously. But for my own personal gain, again, the statistics is everything for me. Being the best invitational winner per attended event, that's all I care about. The four top teams, and I wouldn't be able to say which one would win the event. In my eyes, is G2, BDS, NIP, and TSM. And then you have some close outliners with Team Liquid. I think that Team Empire could do well as well, but maybe not that big of a chance. And then a team that I think is going to do good is MIBR. I've always struggled myself against MIBR because I know their fragging potential, and they put on so much pressure on you when you're playing against them that they're very hard to control. So for me, a close outliner to the top four is MIBR. Who's going to win? I honestly can't tell you.
At the end of the show, we'll do proper predictions where I'll make all of you decide which two teams you think will make it to the finals and who will be crowned world champions. But we don't need to get there just yet. Let's pivot towards the talk of the meta, because a couple of you mentioned it, and I think it does, for those that are watching, deserve a much deeper conversation, because obviously we spent about nearly a year in this, this utility soak meta that was dominated by Wamai and Jaeger and deployable shields. SI kind of ended the mute Mozzie meta that we'd seen previously, where operators like Vigil and Castle were doing exceedingly well. Then sometime around March, April, everything swaps over to the whole deployable shields everywhere, because three very popular operators had access to them. Goyo at this point was largely out of the meta. Kaid got nerfed a little bit. And then we saw all of a sudden, hey, everybody's running Wamai, everybody's running Jaeger. That changed, and we haven't had a lot of competitions since Jaeger's ADSs got reworked, since deployable shields got taken off of Wamai and Valkyrie, since Wamai got nerfed himself as well. So when we look at this meta, which of these teams do you think are going to prosper the most overall, and what kind of meta, especially since Zero is available to be played and we didn't really see all that much of him, what do you think the meta is going to look like for Six Invitational? And we'll start with you, Seth.
I mean, I think you've kind of seen signs of it, but one, with like Wamai having shields removed and some of the other changes they've made, I think bans can be like a lot more flexible. Bans are pretty predictable for a good 6-month period. Everybody just was getting some sort of utility out of there. Where now you could see anything banned, really, maybe more target bans, things like that. I think you're obviously going to see like a lot more Twitch play. I just think in general, you can have a lot more flexible lineups, because you don't necessarily have to bring like 20 flashes or, like every kind of soft denial, because you have to clear everything. And originally, when I was thinking about that, I thought it would play into like OXG's strength, where they're kind of like, they have good players, but I don't think they necessarily work that well together. It's kind of just like they're all over the map and they win their gunfights. And, that kind of play style makes it hard to clear utility and stuff like that. So I kind of thought that would play into them, but they, in my opinion, looked pretty bad. Not to say that, they can't improve from that, but it's just these teams that are like really fast paced and really, individual skilled, it's going to play into their favor. I noticed that like basically nobody mentioned SSG, which are, the defending invite champions. And, they still have the same roster from the last invitational that they won. And I think they're kind of being underestimated. Obviously they were at the top of their game playing like a very structured, clear everything kind of meta, because they have a good semblance of players who can play very organized. But, they definitely have like gunners on their team, and Troy's, one of the best at adapting in terms of games. So I think like SSG is kind of being underestimated right now. Like if you told me SSG won again or made the finals, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I think they're like a wild card.
I was actually going to mention SSG because I thought it was funny as we're running through all these teams. SSG is just noticeably absent, and it, the one thing, not to defend SSG obviously, and I mean I'm kind of glad he's not here because we can talk about SSG so objectively, but the one thing that SSG has always struggled with is playing online. This was a team that would do really well, and many people would say overperform on LAN and then underperform online, and always struggled. Well, over the last year, everything's been online. So it's no wonder that SSG has kind of lagged behind. And obviously, I think they benefited a lot from the mute Mozzie meta too, which is something that they hate when we talk about, but I think needs to be addressed. So we can talk about SSG because I also want to talk about NIP as well. We can revisit those grand finals that we had last time. But Meli, for you, Latin America has always been in many ways defined by how good your fraggers are and how fast your teams play. Is this the Latin American meta that we see right now with how aggressive every team can be and how fast the action can be? And if so, do you think that this is the best chance that your region has ever had at winning the Six Invitational?
For sure. They really like the new meta. Because they were complaining a lot because of the traps, the shields, and the other stuffs. I agree with Seth too about the operator bans. It's gonna be more flexible. I think we starting to see some operator bans because of the specific map they are playing. And this is gonna be good too. But about the meta, yes, Brazilian tend to get better and better with the fast pace game. Like Fabian said before about MIBR, they are really aggressive. They try to and not give you the chance to think, and this is why every time someone talks about a Brazilian team, they always think about the aggressive, the fast-paced strategies. It's like we are not thinking so much about the strategy in the game. We just go, we just rush. But actually, this is our game. This is our style. In every FPS we play, you can see actually in other games like CS:GO, the Brazilian players are always aggressive. They are always try to get one-on-one every time they can. So if this is the meta for us to be the champions, maybe so, but we have to see, man, because the mindset of the Brazilian players have to be 100% in the game. We are too emotional with crowd or without. Actually, I think with Brazilian crowd we are really good, really better, of course, because of the energy that they can pass to the players. But without the crowd, maybe could be better, because if they are losing the game, they can be more calm. I don't know. I think the crowd it's not gonna be the problem too. But yeah, this meta is gonna be good for us.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. That I mean, Fabian obviously said, he mentioned the Brazilian crowd. I have never heard a louder venue than when we were at the Olympic Stadium in Rio. And if you got to be in the crowd for that event, you were right there in the middle of it. We were in a room underneath the stadium. And I just remember it was the phase match. It was the finals. It's phase G2. And I go into the room and we're underneath the stadium. And I hadn't even put the headset on yet, and it felt like the walls were shaking. And it was just like, it was like thunder and an earthquake were hitting at the same time. And I put on the headphones, and the headphones had a direct feed to the floor of Rio, and it was just I don't know how you could have casted that and been able to hear yourself at all, because it was so loud. Same with Sao Paulo. The first time we did Sao Paulo, I remember there's 1,000 people in Max 5, and we're up elevated in our rooms next to each other, and Matt Andrews goes out to say something to the crowd, and the crowd just explodes. And that's my first esport event, and it was insane, right? But in the SSG NIP match, a lot of people said that when the crowd started to get behind Space Station, that's when NIP slowly started losing it, and SSG were emboldened by that crowd, and they kind of took over the same way that Black Dragons was emboldened by the crowd back in Sao Paulo, the same way that FaZe was in Rio. So it will be interesting to see, without a crowd, if it doesn't drag down a Latin America team the same way, and they might be able to, kind of keep their focus and just never really let up the way that you might say NIP did, or FaZe did, or Black Dragons did in their matches.
Yeah, I agree. That's my my hope in this invitational, to see if a Brazilian goes to the finals, if a Brazilian team go to the finals, if it's really that hard to play against the crowd. I want to see that, because we are not going to have the crowd in this event.
People said that I was the reason why the crowd started chanting for Space Station, even though I wanted NIP to win. So that was the funniest part of all this, is that I had to piss off everybody, because I went into that finals wanting NIP to win the whole thing and wanting to see Latin America win, because Meli, that I say that Liquid aren't world champions, and Liquid fans don't like that. If NIP had won SI, then NIP would have been world champions. And I wanted to see that. And everybody's like, oh, he's so biased towards Space Station. I'm like, you idiots. I want NIP to win. I'm not biased towards Space Station at all. I wanted a Brazilian team to win SI. Anyway, we'll see what happens this year. But I do agree. I do think that it is ultimately your region's meta. But I don't think we can talk about aggression without talking about APAC. And Dizzle, one of the things you brought up, which is another point that I want to get to eventually in this show, is how a continuous string of best of ones for the group stages will ultimately make some good teams go home. But before we get into that, obviously APAC is a team where they're going to frag out. You talked about this, Dizzle, early on, where you said, okay, well, you don't necessarily want to play against APAC teams in best of ones because they're not really going to prep for you. They're just going to do what they want to do, and they're going to win. And when you've got teams like Cloud9, when you've got players on that roster that are absolutely capable of taking over a game, you look at Giants Gaming. Hysterics feels like the man can 1v5 most teams in the world, and if he plays the same way that he played online, Hysterics actually had, if I remember correctly, the best stats of any player in the world after the first year of this new league format. And a lot of people don't know that because they don't watch APAC. Hysterics' stats are absolutely mind-boggling. How much do you think that aggression is going to help APAC? And more importantly, this new meta we're in, how much do you think it might upend conventional wisdom with these teams and possibly result in some good teams going home because they can't be as aggressive as they want in a best of one format?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to favor APAC. I won't give, too much of how they do things away, but I think with the map pool that we have, with how they play the maps, with the meta that we're currently in, I think it's very well suited. Hysterics had an incredible year, but I think also overshadows Martin, Speakeasy as well. Speakeasy also put up really solid numbers. So Hysterics definitely isn't a one-man show. Hysterics is absolutely incredible, but Speakeasy is also capable of dropping a plus 20 like comfortably as well when he gets going. So both of them are quite lethal, and Luna Metal and Ysera have years of experience. They were at the first Six Invitational, right? And they've always generally been the bridesmaid to us a lot of the times. Like, we weren't a huge fan of how the APAC lands went because we always ended up matching them. Like, the Giants would have as much experience as we did if brackets were done differently at APAC lands. So, they've got a wealth of experience and really solid lineup. And I think, C9, same thing with Charles and stuff being brought on. Geo is a huge fan of his, and some very big experience there as well with Envy Taylor and Sweet Black, who's changed his name recently.
Is he static now? He's static, right?
Static now,
he's static.
Yeah. And Cyclops as well. I think a bit of a dark horse. Those 5 players on Cyclops, like, they can all frag. They don't miss. The CHE boys are something else, and I think probably one of the most aggressive teams in the world. And all of them very, very capable of holding their own. You don't generally have a game where Cyclops have 1 or 2 strong players and sort of the rest are enabling them. They are all very capable 5 for 5, and they're happy to go look for their ones and win them. So I think the thing with the best of ones is you won't know their map pool. You won't know how they play their map pool. You generally won't know what you're about to load into. And I spend a fair bit of time of my mornings when I'm working watching FPL in NA, and I assure you that is quite structured compared to what APAC is going to do to you.
You mean they're not going to receive global bans for hopping out windows?
Oh, yeah, these guys aren't after, like, they hear you step on a pebble outside and that's intel for them. Like, they don't need a cam, or like you make a noise outside and get ready for not just one coming out a window, right?
Every window's
but
getting blown out.
It seems a little poor fundamentally, but I assure you they know what they're doing. They've been doing it for years, and it's just how they look at the game. A lot like Latin America do, with a lot of quick pace and a lot of rush. APAC, have a different philosophy with how things are done, and I think best of ones is a really good place for them to enable it. I still think a few teams can be quite dangerous in best of threes. I wouldn't write them off the moment groups are finished. But I think it's just about at that point. I can imagine there'll be a lot of rounds where APAC take the first man or two advantage, but they've just got to make sure that they play their fundamentals after that and close the round out, or don't get too traded quickly back, which is something that SI generally has tended to happen a fair few times. Is kills don't usually come in 1 or 2. Usually the scoreboard is just going to light up with like 5 or 6 kills at once. So I think that's just where APAC has a little bit of growing in experience to do, is once obtaining that upper hand is then playing it out correctly. But yeah, I think I'm very excited to watch the APAC teams that are going in action, because I think this meta is really good for the three main APAC North teams that are going. Wildcard not so much. They've previously thrived in a lot more structured environment, a lot more fundamental, and a very strong team when they do it. But losing Ethan recently has been a bit of a hit for them, but they're doing strongly. I think Ethan was had a lot to do with how they played the rounds, as well as his play style was a little bit difficult for sort of other teams to nail down. But I'm super excited to watch the APAC teams in their group stage and best of ones, because I think there'll be a lot of upsets and some very exciting rounds.
I think this might be the first time that we're heading into any event ever where, I mean, outside of Nora, Rengo, and Fnatic, who we usually assumed would make it out of groups, I was always hesitant to give a lot of appreciation to your team in particular, because I was aware that you had players on the team that if they got cold or they got a little bit nervous, that the whole team would crater. You'd have 1 or 2 games where maybe Lusty or maybe Magnet would kind of dive too deep into their own head, and then the whole team would fall apart. And when it's 2 best of 3s and you're gone, 1 bad best of 3 isn't great. And you also continuously had really tough brackets. It seems like some of your contemporaries in APAC were given much easier rides and obviously still couldn't make it through. Fnatic and Nora Rengo tended to have decently tough brackets and seem to be going up against good teams. Because of the group stages the way they are here, you've got 10 in each group. You're playing 9 best of ones, and I think that there are weaker teams than APAC. This is the first time where I'm looking at Giants, Cloud9, and Cyclops. We're on the same page with Wildcard, but I'm looking at Cyclops, Giants, and Cloud9, and I'm thinking at least 2 of these teams have a reasonable shot of not being one of the first 4 teams eliminated. Now, that's also partly because I'm looking at some of the other teams that are going and thinking they are not necessarily as strong. But this is very out of step with where I think APAC has been before. And I'm actually really excited to see what the Giants can do, because I don't know if you'd agree with me. I know Cloud9 is coming in as supposedly the top contender for APAC, but I genuinely think that the Giants have the best shot of going the deepest out of all of the APAC teams. For those that aren't aware, the Giants used to be Aerowolf. That's a name that many of you, if you don't follow APAC, will probably ring some bells here. But I honestly think that Giants is capable of making a deep run. And I'm with you. I'm excited to see as well. And the groups definitely help APAC this time. Instead of some of these APAC teams just being the first to go home in their groups, now there's a really good opportunity for them to go deep into the event.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, especially with Gig coming on for Giants, he's been really good for them. I think in terms of polishing up the fundamentals, they'd previously done it all on their own, so it allows, Lunametal to focus a little bit more in the server, and Gig can do a lot of work outside. But yeah, I think fundamentally they are the best team that APAC has. I think C9, overall, I think they're exceptionally good at playing as a 5-man, which I think is what catches a lot of people out. But also very, very difficult. The Korean scene has improved drastically. We've seen Damwon Kia just signed a team recently. Korea is making a lot of waves, and the level of competition in Korea is rising significantly. But I think Cyclops will be for an entertaining game as well. I think the likes of Cyclops, the likes of Cloud9 have a lot of potential in the BO1s against like the SSGs and stuff, right? Who will be favorites going deep into the competition. But I think they have the potential to take maps off those teams, off the phases and things like that in the best of one format. But coming into the BO3s, I think, Giants are probably long odds, or C9 recently has had the upper hand. But I think Giants with a bit of prep time and stuff should be able to make a better preparation and better run heading into SI.
I'm excited to see, and I think best of ones are obviously going to change that. We'll talk about best of ones next, but obviously, Fabian, you get the last word on this particular topic. Where the meta is at right now, how your team is doing it, how all of Europe is doing it, how you think it could benefit teams like BDS, like G2, etc., and how you think it'll ultimately impact SI, given the fact that the meta is as fast as it is.
I mean, how my team is doing it, you can clearly see on the scoreboard. We're deeper down than some ships that were sunk in World War II. The meta is very fast, and I think that the teams that have players that all have the opportunity and the knowledge to take situations in their own hands and steer the team to what they see as an opportunity is going to do really well. For example, if you have an entry fragger that's not going to communicate with you, like, this is the opportunity I see, or like, this is what I'm going to do now, come with me. You need to just be able to have people that can call stuff on the go. If you get stuck in, the defending team will swing you and they will kill you, and that's basically it. When Seth said about SSG, I totally forgot them even on my list of the 4 top teams. I think that they would be one of the outlier teams, still maybe not the top 4 in my eyes, but they could make it depending on how the brackets go, right? But the meta overall, Europe, we're adapting to it. I think that teams have done much better than we have, which is obviously clear. Otherwise, we would have gone to LAN, wouldn't we? It's fast. I think that Brazil will do well. I'm excited to see them play.
I don't think going into this event, and I think all of you can kind of agree with this, because we haven't seen any competition for the last year, there are so many question marks. Every single SI, I look at the lineup of teams going, and I think, who's going to come out on top, which team is ultimately going to be the best, which team do I think is going to win the world championship. And, you usually have a pretty good idea. I mostly agree with your top 4s so far. The general consensus seems to be, BDS, G2, NIP, and TSM. I would agree with most of those. Obviously, I think SSG needs to be in that conversation. I think the Team Liquid needs to be in that conversation. Absolutely. Those to me are the top 6 going in. I don't have the greatest gauge of MIBR, but outside of that, that's kind of where I stand. And I know that we've been running through just all of you talking in segments, so let's just open up the floor right now and let's talk about best of ones, because this is a group stage that's going to be built off of 9 best of ones. You got 9 shots to rack up points and then make it to the next stage. At the tail end of this group stage, 4 teams are going to be immediately eliminated, Every other team is either going to go on to the winner's bracket or to the loser's bracket, which for people's feelings, we have named the lower and upper bracket, even though it's winners and losers. Kids, some days there are losers in life. And well, this is actually an entire loser stream because, well, none of us are going to be competing at SI. I guess for Meli and I, we have an excuse, but for the rest of you, this is definitely a loser stream. So let's open it up though, just to general conversation. And if we want to talk about best of ones as competitors, as casters, what do we think the immediate upsides for some of these teams are for best of ones? And how does this compare to the best of 3 group stage format that we used to have?
Well, I think NA, just going into it, it's probably at a little bit of a disadvantage because we haven't played best of ones in over a year. Everything we've been playing are best of 3s. So, map pools are created to get to a best of 3. Like, some teams maybe don't play a map or 2, which helps them in a best of 3. But in a best of 1, doesn't really matter because you could always just ban it. So I think for NA, it's probably a little bit of a disadvantage. I think SSG was one of the teams who historically have been much worse in best of 1s and best of 3s. So, Dizzle mentioned earlier that he wouldn't be surprised if, say, Giants or Cloud9 or somebody upset SSG in a best of 1 throughout the, I don't even know what we call it, the group stage.
Yeah, they're groups. It's just the group stage.
So, I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see like SSG, OXG, like some of the teams that are favored certainly drop some best of 1s because I don't think that works in NA's favor, given how we've been playing for over a year now.
Yeah, and I think for APAC, we've been playing this exact format. We play a best of 1 with overtime, 3 rounds. So we've literally played for the last year the format that we're going into. So they've been very confident, comfortable around a lot of bans and vetoes and operator bans. You can operator bans on best of 1s a bit differently than you can going into a long BO3s and stuff like that. But just the overall play style, I think, especially with the meta how it is now, teams can definitely get on a roll pretty comfortably if they're a bit more ready to take the game to you. And with a lot of teams going to SI for the first time, if they're able to sort of recover from that early deficit in a best of 1, a lot of the times in best of 3s, last year we threw Cafe to G2 to Fabian, but we knew Border was coming up next, so you sort of have that mind space to recover. But in a best of 1, 4 rounds down, it gets pretty dire, right? And there's a lot of inexperienced competitors at that sort of level. So I think best of 1s for APAC. I mean, me personally, I'm a huge fan of best of 1s. I think it's my preferred format as a viewer. I think best of 3s are very long. Like I said, I try and watch a lot of NAL, but it's pretty hard to focus that long on the league. And so I think for SI, especially watching best of 1s, teams constantly versing each other is going to be super exciting for the first stage and then move into BO3. So I'm really excited for the best of 1 format.
I am completely in the opposite way. Best of 1s is really, really a poor way of competing, and I don't think it shows the best team of the teams competing against each other.
I agree with that sentiment too.
Best of 3s is the way when you play these big tournaments, and it should be in the EUL as well, and it should be in APAC League. I think it's a sad thing that we're competing in best of 1s when there's so much on the line. And I think that it's a travesty that we have that in the invitationals for the first time. And I think that they're taking a step in the wrong way. I'd rather have 16 teams and BO3s than I would have 20 and best of 1s. But I understand that they need to make money, and I guess the money comes in from the best of 1s because more orgs and all that stuff. But I just think it's a step in the wrong direction, and anyone can win them, and that's sure it might good for a good storyline, but it's not good for competition.
But the thing is, you get your 16 teams in a BO3, right? Because only 4 teams go home from the groups in the BO1. So we get like a lot of intercontinental competition, and then you move into your BO3s with the 16 teams.
Yeah, but it's not the same with the group stages, obviously, because sure, you're going to get into the best of 3s later on, but it gives the chance for weird upsets and teams going through that shouldn't normally go through and would never go through in best of 3s against the same teams that they're going up against. And I just don't like that.
It could create like weird matchups too, because obviously to be good in a best of 1, you basically need a map pool of like 3, because you can always ban down to like one of those 3 maps. So we were talking like, say potentially SSG loses a best of 1 or best of a couple times, and they obviously get through groups. it's going to make the bracket itself weird because then SSG might be playing somebody super early in the tournament that typically they wouldn't play because they wouldn't lose a best of 3. So like, you know, for all we know, you could get a G2 SSG matchup in like the first or second round, where normally that's the kind of matchup that's going to be like a semifinal. Or like, you know, I didn't mention them, but Dark Zero have always been a really good best of 1 team in NA. So you could have Dark Zero coming out as the first seed, and, you know, say SSG loses a couple of games, you could potentially have like a Dark Zero SSG second round match, stuff like that. So I definitely think the best of 1, I'm not a fan of it. I understand why they're doing it. Obviously, more game, like Fabian said, you get more games to stream, you get more orgs there. There's more money in the best of 1s, but in terms of like actually identifying who the best teams are, best of 3s are always going to be like just a better way of doing it.
Yeah, best of 3 is always the best decision to make. But right now, we need the best of 1 to see what is going to happen. You know, I know every team already playing the Pro League. Brazilians did that too. They don't like the best of 1 too, of course. But we need to do that to get into another level. You know. Just talk about is not gonna work. But I agree. It's not the same to see a really important tournament like Six Invitational with a best of 1 and a best of 3. Brazilians don't. I don't get too confident with best of 1 with Brazilian teams because sometimes they choke a lot, and this is something that we need to be careful. But to a viewer perspective and the caster perspective, we can get the most of the teams because of that. In Brazil, as far as I know, they always say they have 7 maps in their map pools. They train all the maps. They are prepared for every map in the game. Maybe 1 or 2 teams don't train all of the maps, but the good thing, at least in the best of 1, maybe we can see everything they can give in the game. You know, because of that, because it's just 1 map. They have to play everything they know in this map. Maybe in the first matches of the group stage, they're going to give everything they know. But if they are already qualified for the playoffs, they're starting to maybe playing a little bit slow, playing the maps they are don't get used to play, and the last match of the group stage could be boring. I don't know.
The way that I see best of 1s, and this is something that I'm assuming that people in chat are going to echo to a certain extent as well, is there's a trade-off with every single format that we do, right? And this is actually a conversation that I think it was somebody from Riot, from League of Legends, talked about how in a perfect world, the most competitive matchup period is a best of 5. It shows which teams have proper endurance. It shows which teams have a more robust, you know, in our case, map pool. In League of Legends, it would be who has a better champion pool, who can work the bans properly, who can make small adjustments in between games. And I mean, you can ask Fabian directly how much endurance matters, especially when you look at that, you know, that infamous coastline matchup between Empire and G2. I mean, endurance was a significant part of why that matchup ended up going the way it did, on top of a bunch of other reasons. So in terms of integrity, best of 5 is superior. But I mean, we can't do a best of 5 for every single matchup because you're looking at 4 to 5 hours usually of competition.
But nobody's asking for best of 5s, Parker. Nobody's asking for best of 5s through the entire tournament.
No, let me finish.
The only best of 5.
Let me finish.
All right. Go ahead.
So I'm echoing the sentiments that were made from the guy from Riot, who said that in a perfect world, best of 5s are the most competitive. The least competitive are best of 1s. But best of 1s tend to be the most exciting and require the least buy-in for viewers. Additionally, the big thing with the group stages here is that there's 20 teams competing, which means that there's 20 fan bases that are going to be wanting to see their team as much as possible. Best of one ensures that if you're a fan of Liquid, if you're a fan of Altiora, if you're a fan of NIP, doesn't matter. You're going to get to see your team compete so many times. And every single time we're going to see different spikes in viewership. We're going to have different fan bases kicking around. And ultimately, it's going to be good for the competition. From a viewership perspective, best of threes tend to be that good middle ground, but still require more of an investment than best of ones. My preference is almost always best of threes. I think that they're more competitive. I think that there's storylines that we can build off of. As a caster, I much prefer best of threes because there's usually a good ebb and flow to the matchup, and I don't need to blow my voice out in continuous best of ones. Meli, I'm sure that you're thinking this as well. Should you and I end up casting SI, you're probably concerned with the fact that there's going to be, 18 best of ones a day split across 2 streams. As a caster, it's extremely challenging to cast continuous best of ones back to back because you can't take a map off. If it's a best of 3 and one of the maps, like let's say map 1 is just like a 7-1, you don't really need to invest that much time in it. You can kind of take a step back, you can match your energy, you can have a good time, and then bring the heat for map number 2 or map number 3 if it ends up going that way. In a best of 1, you have to be a 10 out of 10 for every single 10 moment. There are no breaks. It's exhausting as a caster. So for me, it's like I see this from 2 different perspectives. Competitively, I don't really want best of ones. I'd like to see best of threes because I think the best teams will rise to the top in that system. But I also see best of ones as a lot of regions getting to collide that we've never seen before. How many times does an event go by where we have matchups that we want that we never end up seeing? And then on top of that, viewership, I think, is going to be better for best of ones as well. You may now interrupt me, Fabian, if you'd like.
Oh yeah, but definitely best of one is going to be best from the viewing experience when it comes to watching your team as many times as possible. However, this is the tournament to bring out the best team in the world. I don't really care too much about the viewer experience when it comes to that. You're going to still get your team to play at least 2 best of threes. If you hold to the old format, sure, it's less maps. It's 3 less maps in total. But if there's the teams that go out, they usually go out anyways. Probably the same teams that would go out in best of threes will go out in best of ones. That's what I'm expecting, especially with the teams that have qualified. But I still don't think that best of ones is good for a big tournament like this. And I think that it can bring out very skewed results and very skewed group stages, playoff brackets.
I think like the Swiss format makes more sense than the way they're doing it for this kind of thing too, because they like divided the teams into 2 different groups, or at least if they do Swiss format, you're like, a 0-0 team plays a 0-0 team, 1-0 plays 1-0, 0-2 plays 0-2, etc. So like it's like working down the line to where eventually you get the best teams playing each other and the worst teams playing each other to see who avoids getting knocked out. I think like if they would have just gone with that, that would even make more sense than just like dividing it. Because I think I haven't looked at the groups that closely because obviously, like Fabian said, both of our teams are ass, so we didn't qualify. But like, if I think in Group B there's like 4 NA teams that they're not even. It's not like the groups are evenly distributed. So the Swiss format would have made more sense to me.
Yeah, Group B has TSM, SSG, OXG, and Altiora. Dark Zero is alone in Group A.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't really make sense to me. Like, so we're guaranteed in Group B to get 4 matches of NA teams just playing each other, at least, right? That doesn't make sense. Like, if they do the Swiss format, you're not really guaranteed anybody plays anybody. Just, you may eventually have 3-0 TSM play 3-0 BDS or something like that. And that, to me, is like cooler to see potentially than, TSM and SSG play for the 50th time to decide nothing because we know they're going to make it out of groups regardless.
I was going to say, how dare you deprive the people of OXG versus TSM? It's been at least a week since we saw them play each other. The people are demanding that match. So, I
mean, people said the whole year that our team and OXG were like the closest for 4th and 5th, and we still never played them. So, I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
Did you secretly blow up your roster so you could once again say, wait till we have our full 5, then we'll be top 4?
Yeah, just wait. I'm still assembling the Infinity Stones.
I like in APAC we experimented with the Swiss system because we played that format this year. and albeit at a different scale. I think you're less likely to have blowouts in a Swiss format as well. I think there will be a lot of washes in the round robin. But it's also a lot more difficult from a tournament perspective as well, in terms of like having to get matchups and opponents like basically like late at night when people are going to be already asleep because like they're going to be playing all day, right? And so you're not going to know your winners and losers brackets, which means you're probably going to wake up to who you're going to be playing that day. So I think there's a little bit more integrity in a round robin from a team's perspective and performance wise, but in terms of tournament format, then 100% Swiss. Just coming from like personal experience this year, having done both. There's no perfect option. And make no mistake, I definitely agree that BO3s are the way to go. But I think in terms of, especially this year, with the risk to put the SI on in the first place, and the cost associated with it and everything else going into it, I think that viewership and your concurrent viewers are going to be one of the most important metrics. Performance aside, right? Still, we want to find the world champion, but at the end of the day, like it's a huge investment from Ubi and organizations and stuff to be doing this, across the scope that we've seen the year go for a lot of regions. It hasn't been brilliant. I think that it's super important that we hit those numbers, and like Parker said, there's going to be a lot more viewers in the best of one formats coming and going and likely tuning in because I can watch this map and this one's about to finish, who's playing next, sort of thing. So I think it's likely to attract more eyes in the group stage, which I think is paramount. And maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe the viewership doesn't go quite as well as I think. But I think for this year, especially with COVID, I think this is a much better way to do it than the previous BO3 system.
In the end, we are going to have 8 teams from each group passing to the playoffs. So it can be some upsets in the groups, yes, but I don't know if you are going to see a lot of upsets because of the best of one. In the playoffs, we're going to have the upper bracket and the winners and the losers bracket in the playoffs in the best of 3. So it's not that hard to imagine the good teams in the playoffs,
It's just
even with the best of one.
It's just who they face up against. For example, the teams that we are looking here at going top 4, if they place just 2 steps down and 2 steps up, they're going to play each other the first game in playoffs, and then one is going to loser bracket. And then they have the one more chance to prove themselves, obviously. But it's still a bit too early in my mind.
NIP lost to TSM in the 2020 Invitational and got the finals. So
sure, but they also were 1 map down, which is another subject to bring up. That is completely, I'm not going to use that word. It's not very good from a experience of watching a grand final of a World Cup with 1 map down to begin with, just because you lost the game. You should just play 2 matches after each other and then play on, but still you're 1 map down. I just see it as a very unlikely situation to happen.
Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say about that we're risking with this group stage, and I'm glad Supr brought it up, is that in Group B, you've got 4 NA teams. In Group A, you've got 4 LATM teams. I mean, is it likely that it's going to happen? No. Is it possible that Group A is entirely LATAM and Group B is entirely North America leaving the group stages? I mean, it is. It is possible. I don't necessarily think that's likely because on Group A, you've got to have Furia going out in the groups into the playoffs. And then in Group B, you've got Altiora doing the same thing. I don't necessarily think that these 2 teams, if they make it to the playoffs, are going to be top 4 in either of their respective groups. But it's possible. And this is Meli, if you remember, a concern that was echoed was a Group C last year in SI, where you had 3 LATAM teams in one group. It was MIBR, it was Liquid, and it was NIP, all in the same group with Giants. And the one thing that we used to have when we had multiple groups was you could very easily carve up which teams in which regions were going to be in which groups. The idea was that if possible, every single group should have 1 team from each region. Now, obviously, you can still end up, with 4 EU teams coming out on top. Look at what ended up happening with the Raleigh Major. All 4 of the finalists were European teams. It can happen. but at least there's a greater chance of it. Having smaller groups means that you can really end up with even less diversity, because we aren't basically forcing that diversity across 5 groups or 4 groups. We're doing it across the 2. So there is the lower bracket. So there is a saving grace. And NIP did make that miracle run through the lower bracket. They lost to TSM, and then NIP clobbered every other team along the way to make it into the finals. Since you mentioned it, Fabian, I think we can revisit it here, because with every single competitive structure that we see, there's always going to be a trade-off for viewership, for ease of understanding, for ease of running a tournament, and then for competition. The best of 5 system that we have right now, with a lower bracket and an upper bracket, means that the team that goes flawlessly to the finals gets a 1 map advantage going into those finals, because they haven't lost yet. This is obviously very controversial. NIP ended up going down a map strictly because they'd already lost, and then put on a hell of a show against SSG. I think it's impossible for us to not argue that if both of those teams had gone in on an even footing, and this is of course ignoring the fact that NIP lost to TSM earlier, so they wouldn't have even been in the finals, but let's just keep going with this thought process. If NIP and SSG go into that matchup tied 0-0, it is very likely that NIP ends up winning the whole thing. Do we have anybody that's going to defend the best of 5 system right now, where a team that has made it flawlessly through the upper bracket gets that 1 map advantage? Is there anybody here who's going to defend that? Because I know some of you are not happy with it. Is there anybody that's going to defend it before we get into the reasons why you don't like it?
Don't like it?
Well, I mean, Fabian already said he didn't like it, so I'm assuming that that's going to be, and judging from the feelings of the community, I'm assuming that's probably going to be something that more than one of you also feel. Is there anybody who can defend a team that goes flawlessly going through the event getting a 1 map advantage? Is there anybody who likes that?
I don't know. Sometimes I think it's good, but I'm not saying because of NAP loss, because of that. But you have to give something in this final. I don't know exactly what to change, but right now this is the only thing that we have. So I don't know if someone let me point this way. I agree with Fabian. It's not about one game that makes you a team that is going to be lose everything because of 1 map. But in the other way, you have to give something for the winner in the winners bracket. I don't know what the chance to choose more maps in the best of 5. I don't know, man, but you have to give something to him.
Well, that would be a better choice, obviously, than a free map win immediately. I mean, I think that an automatic map ban would be better, even though it's going to be like, that team gets to decide which maps to play. Sure, that's a very, very big advantage as well, but I'd probably rather see the team that won everything get to choose more maps. Maybe that they get to choose the first 2 maps or something like that, or that you play 2 matches if it's needed. If the team that won the upper bracket, they win the first best of 5, well, then they win the tournament. If they lose the first best of 5, you play another one. Maybe not immediately, give them an hour and a half break, give them 2 hours break. I don't know how long, but push it on. Play another best of 5. Start from 0-0 again. But I'd rather see a fair game where we actually get to see, well, at that point of time, the 2 best teams in the world go up against each other's throat and literally be crazy matches. I'd rather see 2 best of 5s, which is going to be super exhausting for everyone involved, obviously, but at least it would be fair.
Yeah, I agree with Fabian on what he said, coming from like console, because that's how Call of Duty does it. And we brought that up in NA at one point. I think it's either for the qualifiers for the majors or one of them. And the reason, obviously, that they can't do that is because, so if you were to do, or for an invitational, I feel like it's different. But if you were to say, if you come from the winner's side, you have to lose 2 series, and if you come from the loser side, you just have to lose 1, which makes sense because you have to. If the loser has to lose twice, so should the winner have to lose twice in a series. But what we were told is then it's hard to schedule that, because if the winner just wins like a best of 3, they just win. And maybe it's over in 2 hours, an hour and a half. If the winner loses the best of 3 and that goes 3 maps, and then they play another 3 maps, you could potentially have a 6 or 7 hour game. So it's hard to like schedule for them, because obviously they have other stuff they want to, whether it's advertising, whatever it may be, during the finals and stuff like that. It's hard to schedule around having anywhere from an hour and a half match to a 6 hour match. Now, is that what I would prefer? Yes, I think it makes, as I said, by far the most sense if you're going to format your tournament to be a double elimination tournament, like a losers and winners bracket, then it only makes sense that the team from the winner's side should have to lose twice. You can't have a double elimination bracket, but then you get to the finals and you say to the winning team, "Oh, if you lose this, you're out, but we'll just throw you a map." That kind of just like, it's like for the finals, you're just making your own rules, honestly. It doesn't fit to the format of the rest of the tournament. So I think they've got to figure out a consistent way to schedule the time for the final, because in my opinion, I agree, the winner should have the advantage of having to lose twice, not just some like random, map ban advantage or whatever it may be, because that doesn't follow the format of the rest of the tournament.
I mean, you give if that would be the case, that the team from the lower bracket actually wins 3 maps, you give them a second chance to come to the final and actually win it. But the losing team doesn't get it at all. So we lost 3 maps and now we're out. But the other team also lost an entire game. And had there been no loser bracket, well, they would have been out already.
So I think there's 2 problems here. I think the first is, if you want to solve your initial BO5 at the moment, like with the Elim bracket, with a 7 map pool, I think you give both map bans to the bracket winner. Let them ban 2 maps. I think that's going to give you, the viewer, the best experience and the most competitive BO5, as well as an advantage worth fighting for the winner. And you could even toss them if they want to choose either who bans first, and then they get to choose their sides. There's a few things in the veto that you could use as an upper hand to get an advantage. I think that solves the bracket. But ultimately, if you want to solve the BO5 issue completely, is you need to move away from an elimination format, and you need to move into a conference format like the NFL, where you effectively build out your 8 teams on either side and then funnel it down to 1 team from each side, because then you have a fair BO5. They've won their brackets, they've played in group stages, you move them out. So I think it just needs an entire tournament rework, and that, I think, is the best way to solve it. Is I'd be fully behind the BO1 format that they've got into the 16 stage, 8 each side, and then play through a BO3 all the way until the final, where you can have a BO5 in a conference format. I think is the best way to structure the Invitational, personally. But if you want to just solve the BO5 and are absolutely in love with the elimination, then I think it has to be done. The winner bracket advantage is both map vetoes, and they decide if they either want to pick the map first, or they let the other person pick the map first, and then they get side preference.
The way that I would like it, and obviously I don't know if it's possible or not, and the logistics behind it are much bigger, would be to have a 3-stage instead of 2-stage finals. So the way that we have it right now, if you want to keep 2 groups, that's fine. Maybe even expand to the 4 groups, and then the last place team in every single group goes home immediately. Your first stage is your group stages. You have 4 teams go home of the 20. It leaves you with the final 16 teams. Then you have a double elimination segment where you narrow it down to the final 8 teams. And then the third stage is single elimination with the final 8 teams like we had before. And then the final 8 teams compete like usual. The first day would be, 4 best of 3s. The second day would be the semifinals. Then the grand finals are a best of 5. But the losers bracket's already done at that point. You have the winners bracket and the losers bracket for the 16 teams for the second stage. And then the third stage would be its own separate 3 days. So you'd have 3 days times 3 stages, each 3 days. The final 3 days is single elimination. So that way you do get a proper best of 5, because the losers bracket's already been resolved at that point. You've already gone past the losers bracket, and now you've got the best 8 teams that have gone through both the group stages and a double elimination, and now it's do or die for the final 8 teams. And then you have your official playoffs where you end up with, if you go home, you go home. That's it. You've already had your 2 chances to stay alive. You made it through. Congratulations. You're one of the 8 best teams in the world. This is it. Don't blow it. Or what you do is you have a bracket reset of some kind, because I'm also a big fan of bracket resets. But the problem is that having 2 best of 5s is impossible on the same day. 2 best of 5s with proper intermissions, proper breaks, possibly doing content between, allowing casters to rest, means that if you're not swapping out duos, which I think swapping out duos during a finals is a bad idea. If you're keeping the same casting duo, you're potentially casting 10 maps in one day, and you don't know how to pace it, because that first best of 5 looks like it's going to end, and then it doesn't, and then it looks like it's going to end, and then it doesn't. And then next thing you know, oh my God, there's a whole other best of 5. One casting duo alone is going to struggle with a best of 5 to begin with, and you're usually spent by that 5th and final map. Now you got to do it again. That's a lot of work. And it's not fair to those casters to then say, okay, well, you did what should have been the finals, but now we're going to give another duo this second best of 5 to conserve energy. That makes no sense. So from that perspective, you've got to worry about production. You've got to worry about the talent. You've got to worry about all that jazz. A bracket reset with a best of 3 makes more sense logistically, but then your grand finals could end up being 2 maps, right? You go through this whole thing and then you've got a bracket reset and a team only needs to win 2 maps and then it's over. That's super anticlimactic for the biggest event of the year. So I don't know if this was the plan for SI, but what I would like in the future is 3 days of group stages, 4 teams go home. 3 days of the middle stages where 8 teams go home in a double elimination format, and then the final 3 days with obviously like a day or 2 in between. The final 3 days of the playoffs, those are played mostly on stage. If you lose, you go home. There's no second chances. That's it. And then we can have a normal best of 5 at the end. That would be Parker, my solution.
This is the one time in your life that I'm going to tell you that I'm proud of you and you have come with a good idea. For someone that is a communist, this is the first time you've said something that makes sense. But that's probably the best bracket that we could possibly get, on the best tournament layup we could possibly get currently.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good format. I think it's more so on Ubisoft in terms of like, because that's a pretty long format, it'd probably be over 2 or 3 weeks, which obviously is going to raise cost a lot.
We only have 2 weeks though.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's 2 weeks, but there's tons of downtime and there's setup time as well. You only need the venue for the final 3 days. Right? Most of it can be done in hotels.
Yes.
Right?
We played 2 weeks last time.
We're already doing like that right now.
ESL Katowice does that, right? Like when you look at IEM Katowice and how they format it, I remember last year's or 2 years ago's IEM Katowice honestly felt like the event was 2.5 weeks long. Because they had like the newbie stage and they had like the legend stage and then they had all these different stages, and then finally they should have had an in-person audience for the playoffs, but they canceled it because of COVID. But essentially you don't bring a crowd in until the playoffs anyway. The shitty part is that the crowd's going to want to see as many teams as possible. And the one major complaint that we had from last year's SI was that a couple teams, most notably G2, went out without a crowd being there. I, as a caster, no offense to you, Fabian, I think it would have been an infinitely more significant moment if G2 lost on stage at SI, because that's never happened before. If G2 had lost on stage and then gone out that way instead of going out, in a hotel conference room. But under this system, you'd still have 8 teams in the playoffs, and you still have the 3 days in the stadium or wherever it's going to be. So
sometimes you do hit it right on the spot, Parker.
Nailed it.
Congratulations. Now you've done it for 2021, where you have to wait another, 10 months, 11 months-ish for the next time.
The way that you could structure it too is that you'd have the teams, because the teams usually fly in like 2 or 3 days ahead of time. Obviously, this event's going to be very different because the teams have to fly in ahead. They have to quarantine. Right now, the local law in France is 7 days. If you're coming from, I think it's 7 days if you're coming from outside of the EU, which also includes the UK. And I think it was 3 days if you were coming from inside the EU, but now I think they've extended it to 7 days, period, if you're entering France. So you've got a week now of downtime where, you don't necessarily need to pay to rent things, but, if you're organizing it this way, Ubisoft has to pay for, 7 days of food, of hotels, of accommodations, etc., for teams to basically do nothing because they're going to be in quarantine/isolation, right? So assuming they follow the rules that the government laid out. But I mean, under normal circumstances, you have the teams fly in, you know, they get a day or two of practice, they get a day to do media, and then the group stages go, let's say, you know, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you get Friday off. You've got set, you know, Saturday, Sunday, Monday would be the days where you have the double elimination brackets, and then you've got 2 days of buffer or 3 days of buffer. You've got practice, you've got media, and then you have the event start on Friday morning. So, I mean, in all reality, it's really only you'd really only need to fly in on a Monday, and then you'd be flying out a week and a half later, or almost 2 weeks later. It's going to cost money, but if you want to put on the best fucking show, you're going to have to spend money. This is SI, for crying out loud. Like, this is not the time to start counting pennies. It makes no sense. This is when you splash out.
Thank you, Parker. Thank you, Parker, to saying that. Thank you.
Like, this is the biggest event of the year. Spend some fucking money. Like, for crying out loud. Like, we're not, this isn't like a dream hack where you have to bring your own computer if you want to compete. This is the biggest fucking event of the year. You give out a $3 million prize pool, spend some goddamn money, and have a proper tourney. That's the way I would see it. And I understand that this year they can't do that, but in the future, we saw last year, I thought last year SI was fantastic. I thought that it was the best it could have been under the circumstances it was in. I think this year it looks like it's going to be the best it can be under the circumstances it's in, but I think that there are improvements that can be made for the future. So I think that exhausts that topic. So the next topic that I want to talk about is, let's talk about where the meta is going to go, right? So obviously a bunch of changes were made yesterday. I don't know if you guys talked about this, but I want some input from different regions. Not a huge amount of changes. Honestly, it was mostly tinkering. If you saw the designer notes, changes to the radius of Ash's explosive launcher and Zophia's launcher. Echo got some significant buffs. Kali got a buff and then also a nerf. They got rid of the angled grip on Melusi, which just about fixes her. You've got Mira and Legion losing their 1.5 scope, etc. So let's just open the floor again, and then Aruni is going to be available in short order as well for the next set of competition. Do we think we're going to see any major meta changes here? Do you think any of these changes actually mattered? And if not, what changes would you like to see made further to the meta?
I think they're all pretty insignificant.
Insignificant or significant?
Insignificant. I don't think any of those are like really game changing. Obviously the Melusi nerf is like ridiculous. Like I really dislike how Ubisoft has kind of taken the approach of, rather than they basically, their last resort is to change utility on operators, and they keep trying to change like scopes and stuff on like the guns. Like, I really dislike that. That's not really like a nerf. Like, you know, you're just taking angled away from Melusi, like, or taking the 1.5 away from Legion. You know, I don't like nerfing operators by changing what attachments the weapons have. Like, actually nerf the operators. That's why they're broken. In terms of what they did, I haven't honestly looked closely at it, but I don't see any of that being significant. Melusi's still going to be extremely powerful, etc. You know, and none of the buffs, I guess, really would matter much to me. Again, I haven't really looked too closely at it, but that's just from what you just said, how I see it.
It won't change much at all.
Yeah, I agree.
We still have the power creep in this game that's insane. Newer operators are always the bestest. I don't know why it takes them so long to nerf them. Like Melusi having her 3 boobers still is insane. Yeah, I don't know. Feels like we want to go this way, but Ubisoft wants to go that way. And we don't seem to be going in the right direction, according to me. But then we all have different opinions on that part.
The question I need to ask, and this is, I talked about this a little bit on my own stream yesterday. And I noticed a lot of chatter, especially from pros, who like, they kind of, it's like Groundhog Day. Every single time Ubisoft releases designer notes, the first step they always take is to change the weapons, because it's the easiest. It's by far and away the easiest. Remove an attachment, change a sight/scope, which they have now a lot more opportunity to do because there's a whole wealth of new scopes that got introduced instead of just ACOG versus the one-time housings. Or reduce the damage of the weapon, or change the recoil of the weapon, and then their next step is to tinker with secondary gadgets, take away frag grenades, take away a nitro cell, give them, you know, something weaker like claymore or a proximity alarm or something like that. And then when those fail, their next step is usually to tinker with the operator themselves. So maybe make Jaeger a 3-speed, now he's a 2-speed. Maybe make Kapkan a 2-speed instead of him being a 3-speed. Maybe make Warden a 2-speed, etc. Their last step is usually touching the gadget. I don't think there's any of us here who will disagree that Melusi's gadget being nerfed would be bad. I think all of us would say, yeah, maybe make her gadget a little bit worse. It's a little annoying. It's maybe a little too overtuned. Why do you think everybody gets so bent out of shape that they make these small changes on like their very first step? Do you think it's just that people are frustrated that they don't go far enough? Or do you think that,
No.
What do you think the frustration is then?
The frustration is from the first step to the fourth step. It's how long that takes. I've got like no issue if that's what they're to do, and a month later they had something. If it was adjusted within the season, within the 3 months, before we then run into another issue with the next one, then it would be fine. But you know, it's scaled, right? Like we spoke about the Wamai, we spoke about the Goyo, we spoke about the Jaeger for so long, for a year. But that all came back to the slits and the deployable shields. That's where it all started. And then it just got added upon and upon and upon and upon. And, you know, they've been very reactive at the moment with Jaeger and his change, which has definitely been a breath of fresh air. They moved some shields around. But if that hadn't have been done and a Rooney comes out next season and we still had all that, like, the 20-second meta goes to, like, you just throw it all out the window at that point, right? So I think that's the big problem. I personally don't have a huge issue with the ideology of it, but I think it's the reactiveness between step 1 and step 4 that is the concern. And for so many years, it's been that way that we know what step 1 looks like and we know how long it's going to take to step 4. And so they're quite vocal to try and get that push sooner. I think is personally, from my point of view at least, is what I would surmise it to be.
The private channels don't work that they have with us. They pretend that we have some sort of say in it, but no matter what we put up there, it just goes in one ear and out the other. I mean, if I bought a hamster, I could literally make it grow up to be an adult hamster. The hamster dies. I bury the hamster in my backyard, and they still haven't changed Melusi. Like, it just takes so fucking long. There's no words for it. I've just spoken too many times about it. I've been warned by Ubisoft too many times about it, but it doesn't stop.
I mean, in your defense, hamsters live on average 2 to 3 years, so you're killing that hamster from neglect.
Yeah, that hamster has literally been dead for 5 years before they decide to change something. They're gonna be like, that hamster, oh, it's time to bury it. Maybe now we should start thinking about making a change.
And I mean, we don't have the expert opinion that they do, right? Sorry.
Talking about in a game design perspective, it's more complex to do that. They have a lot of changing in the game, in the code of the game, the game code, and the team is different. I think it's the third or the fourth team that are coding the game. So, in my perspective, when I work with programming, the Rainbow Six code right now, it's like a web of shadows. You know, I don't know if they are with the game in their hands right now. So to change something specific like the gadgets, I think it's more complex than the changing like the recoil, put some flash in the bug, and then change the velocity of the operator. I don't know. I don't get. I don't wanna be like a how can I say? I just wanna I just don't wanna mess with the opinions of everyone of how I think that the game should change, because there can be consequences when you use wrong words in your sentence, But it's complex.
Doesn't matter what words we use, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
I could speak Vietnamese to them, and they would understand me just as well if I spoke English.
My guys are notably quiet, right? Like, we don't take to public forums for these sorts of things. It's just not in our nature. And like Fabian said, sometimes it's futile, right? So we generally just we approach everything with a positive mindset and try and, I suppose, mitigate what we can where we can. I think I completely understand, Meli, that it's a complicated game. It was probably never built to be where it's headed. It's like, how many more years are they investing in it? Are they just going to keep, if we've got like 40 or something, 50 more operators to go, are they just going to keep stringing along with the code, or are they going to make it more workable for them for the next 5 or 10 years? Because at some point, right, like you look at what League of Legends used to be compared to where it is now, right? Like, they had to change everything. All we can speak from is a consumer point of view, where we see other FPS titles and how quickly those things are being actioned, right? And obviously, like, Valorant's a big topic at the moment, and how quickly things are addressed or removed from there, whether it's operator being taken out of the playlist, fixed a day or two later, whether it's utility and updates and to try and bring them more into line and their philosophy. Whereas I think with ours, it's a very long process. And then a lot of the times it's very contradictory in terms of the message that they're sending, which creates a lot of frustration and confusion as well. But like I said, we just embrace it. We roll with the punches at this point. 5 years on, it's about all we can do is just make the most of it. But
yeah, I was going to say, I think I've talked to you and Tara about this before, but I understand the coding aspect of it and that takes time. The main issue that I've always had is like, there's two things. So they kind of followed League and to how they will quarantine a new operator for a little bit. And then we also have TTS, but from what I would say is feedback given on TTS isn't really used to nerf operators a lot of the time. Like, they might make a small adjustment. Like, I think with Melusi, they nerfed the range on it, a little bit, but that wasn't it still was overpowered. And then when an operator goes into quarantine, I feel like they don't make any adjustments at all during the quarantine period, where it's like in League, when new champions are quarantined, they're actively trying to balance that operator so it can be introduced into the esport and to the pro play. Whereas I feel like in our game, they're in quarantine just because they're new, and then we'll throw them into pro play, and then, oh yeah, they are overpowered, so we'll deal with that 9 months later. But the idea of quarantine, if we're following the League pattern of it, should be that we are using the quarantine period to actively tinker and mess with this, operator, so that when it is introduced to pro play, it's not all of a sudden there is just this extremely powerful operator in play. It's that it's balanced by the time it's introduced, not being balanced as we play. That's the idea of quarantining or having a test server in general, so that by the time it's introduced to play, it's not broken. But I don't think we do that.
No, I think fundamentally the big difference is Riot is an esports company at its very core. Like, everything they do has the mantra and the ideology towards the esports success, because their games are developed as esports from the beginning, whereas Ubisoft's aren't. And, amongst all their titles that they have, and the developers working on everything that they're working on, and being that most of the revenue isn't coming from the esport itself, I think it's more we have an esports branch in Ubisoft rather than an absolute esports focus in the company, and just from the size of the scope of what they're working on. So I think sometimes the devs cop a lot of slack because, we speak about why aren't the devs doing this and why aren't they doing it, but frankly it probably comes from above them, to be honest.
Yeah, but nobody's saying it's coming from the devs. We're saying it's coming from Ubisoft. I mean, a lot of the people that I know that have had ideas and thoughts about how things should be changed and balancing, they've just given up because there's no response to it. Why talk to them when there's like it's just taking such a long time? We're not getting the response at all, and then people just give up.
I used to be pretty vocal back at the start about how pros were not going through proper channels, and at the time they absolutely weren't. You know, there was a lot of pros who did not go through proper channels. I've mentioned it on this podcast before, where it's like I would see things that were posted in Discord channels. I would see things that would be said or I would hear things that would be said in Discord calls. I would hear things that were said at playtests, and frankly, kind of, you know, shake my head and say, this is not how anything gets changed. You know, like people are going to clam up. And I think there's a couple things that need to be noted. Number one, the vast majority of the people that we used to communicate with from a balancing perspective at Ubisoft are now gone. That team is almost entirely turned over the last year or year and a half or so. A huge portion of the people that I know at the Rainbow Six team are gone. And a lot of people saw that as like a sign that the sky was falling. But in reality, it's just that these people have been working on this project for 6 or 7 years, because a lot of them were working on it before the game was released. And I mean, 6 to 7 years on the same game is basically a lifetime in game development. So a lot of these people decided to, you know, try new things. Ubisoft as a company is remarkably casual. And I will say that I have had conversations with Ubisoft staff who they just hate esports. They hate what it brings. They hate the negativity. They hate what it brings from people on Twitter. They don't like what competition does to a scene. They don't like the constant criticism, etc. And the other thing too is that we have the vast majority of the people who play this game play it casually on console. And every time this balancing conversation comes up, and I mean, it's been really prevalent over the last 24 hours because of the whole Zofia controversy that's been going on, is the casual community keeps saying we have the majority. We have an overwhelming majority of the player base. Why are they listening to not just PC players, but why are they listening to pro players? You know, when they represent 0.1% of the actual player base. My theory is that if you're going to play this game casually on a console, you probably don't have a good say in balancing because you don't play this game at a proper level to actually know what needs to be balanced. You know, just because I drive a car doesn't necessarily mean that I know how to design a car. Just because you play Rainbow Six doesn't mean you know how to balance Rainbow Six. And that extends to the pros and the casters as well. I hear bad takes. I've said bad takes before. We all have. But the issue that we have, that Valorant doesn't have, that CSGO doesn't have, that League doesn't have, is that these games are PC only and their player base is really, really competitive. You go on the CSGO subreddit, you go on the League of Legends subreddit, you even go on the Valorant subreddit, and they talk about pro play. They talk about competition. League and the CSGO, the Global Offensive subreddits, almost exclusively talk about competition. Valorant, maybe a little bit less because Valorant is a game that is trying to court casuals, but you go on the Rainbow Six subreddit and you are going to have an absolute aneurysm. Because not only do they not talk about competitive play, but when they do, it is to shit talk competitive play. We have the same divide between the pros and the casuals as Call of Duty does and as Overwatch does. And what unites us with those two games and separates us from CSGO, League of Legends, Valorant, and Dota. Those games are PC only. Their player base is really competitive. The vast majority of people who are playing Call of Duty, Overwatch, and Rainbow Six are doing so on consoles. They don't know the game because they don't play it at a top level. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But then they turn around and complain that we nerf certain operators because their experience differs so greatly from the top level. Just as you're not balancing sports for the kids that are playing, you know, pickup basketball or playing a beer league hockey game, you're not balancing professional esports around the kids who play casually. And the devs, when you add it to the fact that the devs are also quite casual in the way that they see games, Ubisoft as a company makes heartwarming, fun, really casual games. No Ubisoft games are particularly challenging. It begins to make a lot of sense why there's always some pushback. And going through the proper channels right now doesn't really seem to be working, because I will agree with Fabian, and I don't know what is going on right now and why Fabian and I keep agreeing with each other. But I will be honest and say that I used to say consistently go through the proper channels because they didn't. Now I'm not defending the people who are lashing out on Twitter because it seems to be the only way to make any change happen. The proper channels just do not seem to be working the way they used to. And even when you go and you give really good feedback, it seems to mostly get ignored. When the Mozzie Buck Jaeger patch went through, what was it, like a year ago or almost a year ago, and now this patch as well, I had a lot of bad things to say about these patches because they don't address the underlying issues with any of these operators. And Dizzle, you nailed it when you said the problem is that going from step 1 to step 4 can take a year. It took Lion a year to get reworked. It took Ella 6 to 7 months just to get nerfed. And these were not big changes. It's inexcusable that it takes this long. And I can understand why people get frustrated.
You guys remember when they released...
it'd be fine.
The Revolver in Counter-Strike. Do you guys remember that? If you played Counter-Strike at that point.
Yeah, they made it really overpowered to sell crates and then nerfed it in like 2 weeks.
They nerfed it, I think, the next day.
I thought it was a week later.
It's just like, it was just insane the speed that they nerfed it in comparison to what we see.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen here. Never.
Every developer is going to release things overpowered, by the way. Every MOBA does it. Overwatch does it. You release them super overpowered for a couple days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. But then as Seth pointed out, the whole purpose behind quarantine is to fucking nerf them. Like, there's no reason why Melusi sits in quarantine for 3 months and everybody says, hey, these need to be changed. Or Wamai sits in quarantine for 3 months and everybody says, these are going to be a nightmare. You need to fix them. And then they come out of quarantine and everybody freaks out. And then Ubisoft finally says, okay, we'll do something. When it's like, well, you had 3 months to do it. What were you doing? Why were you not acting then? It's puzzling. Now, the question that I had that was kind of not...
they don't play the game.
What did you say?
They don't play the game.
I think some of them don't play the game at a top level. And I mean, the balancing cell and the people who do play the game at a top level are not the same people. But the question that I will say is, it's just a broad meta discussion for all of you. What are the problematic operators right now? And what changes would you like to see be done to them? I mean, Melusi's obviously the low-hanging fruit, but there's been conversations about changing Jackal. There have been conversations about changing Hibana. Are there any other changes to operators right now that you'd like to see? And Seth, it's been a while since you spoke, so I'll let you go first.
I think Hibana is pretty overpowered now. I'm thinking the ones that are going to be overpowered, obviously the operators should get banned a ton. Hibana just completely breaks some maps without it being banned. Like Clubhouse, for instance, basement with Hibana up. It's impossible to now deny Kitchen Hatch like ever. And it obviously just gives you the ability to open up pretty much anything you want to. Like on Villa, for instance, teams used to be able to impact off the wall so you can't get the long angle to like the vault. It's literally impossible to do that now because you could just do it 2 at a time until they're out of impacts. So I think Hibana's, they buffed it, and I would almost say like kind of unnecessarily. I thought Hibana was in a good spot. It was a good operator. It's still played by everyone. And Mira is banned a lot. There's a lot of complaints about Mira. I think you could look at taking away a window on it and just give it one window. It would still be a strong operator. It would certainly make you have more particular strats or maybe more particular reinforcements if you only had one Mira to choose from. Valk is banned a lot. I don't know that there's like a nerf to Valk. I heard somebody say like you should make it to where Valk can't throw cams outside. I don't really agree with that. I honestly think Valk's fine. But the one that stands out to me is like, I think Hibana's broken. Obviously, we've already talked about Melusi's pretty broken. I don't understand why people would say Jackal should be nerfed. Like Jackal's not even really played enough to where I would say it's like some sort of broken operator. The two that stick out to me are just Hibana and Melusi. And then I think you can make the case to like, remove a Mira window, do something with Mira. And they've kind of nerfed Echo. Obviously, the game maybe is better for it, but Echo's almost just like useless at this point, I feel like, in a lot of cases. So yeah, that's just, I would mainly say Melusi, Hibana, and maybe Mira.
One thing I want to talk about is Mira first, because she got changed, and I hear that one Mira window alone. The devs have said many, many times that they don't ever want to have just one gadget. And they've been very firm on that. And let's say, for example, that the devs flat out refuse to reduce her Mira window to 1. How else do you nerf Mira if she still keeps 2 Mira windows? What options are there?
And maybe
You can't
if
see through
if you
one.
can see her.
So one of you saying you
maybe-
can't see through one, and the other of you saying you can see her.
It's such a bullshit idea just because it's like it's so stupid to we cannot have less than 2. Like,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it's very
using your brain. It's like fucking make the mirror window black on both sides. Then like maybe remove all her guns. She can have a knife only. She can hand out Coke cans to her teammates to boost their HP regen or something. What do you want us to say? When is this? When does it stop with the stupid ideas?
I will
Like,
say
I'm
that
not very
I do not
intelligent,
support her in its current state. I think that giving her one mirror window is too weak, because all you need to do is pop the gas tank on the back and her whole gadget is gone. And like, cool.
But if you can't pop the gas tank, like look at the basement attack for Oregon, for example. 2 mirror windows. Well, you put one on each side, and then both sides are going to be. Now we're looking at casual play. Obviously, a pro team might be able to handle it better, but still, it can be really hard to deal with a mirror window if the right operators are banned. And for example, you ban Thatcher on Oregon basement, and you put the kite charge in the electric room towards blue, and you throw the kite charge inside the bomb site. How are you going to take care of that mirror window? Well, it's almost impossible. But if you only have one, you can always change and go on the other side. But if she has 2 mirror windows, she has one on each side, and which one do you pick? Which one are you not going to be able to... Which side do you want to die on, basically?
I like Meli's option a lot, by the way, of making them see-through. If you make both of them completely transparent...
I think that's kind of pointless, because you always are just assuming it's not like you're just assuming there's nobody behind the mirror. Like, you always are thinking there's somebody behind the mirror anyway. So I can just look him in the eyes while he stares at me behind a shield. That's kind of like pointless. Like, you already know the guy's going to be playing you on a mirror. Like, to me, if you give them one mirror, it also makes defense more interesting, because then maybe your mirror players, like, whatever side you're pushing, that guy's flexing around on where to put his mirror potentially, or you just have different kind of setups to force them to go into a mirror. Like, I think it makes defense more interesting than just like, yeah, we'll just put a front mirror, and then, maybe we'll put a blue mirror, or we'll put a mirror towards freezer. Like, that's just very default things, and it makes teams that maybe aren't that great, they can play defense fine because they have Mira. So then you're banning Mira, and I feel like Mira is going to be a lot banned a ton now with the Wamai ban
and Echo not needing to be banned all the time as well.
Yeah, so I feel like when I'm thinking about operators that need to be nerfed, you look at the ones that are always banned in Pro League, because those are typically a good sign of like what pro players think are game-changing operators. And to be honest, no operator should be completely game-changing by themselves, and Mira is one of those operators.
Another option, what if you made it so that her mirror could be blown up like a deployable shield? What if you make it so it's fragile, and a sledgehammer, a maverick torch, or an explosive can break it or can shatter it? For example, like, what if you gave it a fragility that wasn't just the canister on the back? Because really her only, when she was first released, the game was in such a different place. You looked at vertical play when Mira was released, and it's like, what? You had Buck and Ash were really the only 2 operators that you could get beneath a Mira and do any substantial damage with, and the natural counter to her at the time was Twitch. And Twitch was picked a ton, and Twitch was very useful for a number of reasons. Well, now Twitch is not as strong as she used to be, and now you've got Zofia, and now you've got explosives from below that people are using, and you've got different maps now where most Mira windows can be pressured either from above or below. What if you rework it to allow it so that it can be, shot with a grenade launcher? Like, Ash can take care of it, or Zofia can take care of it, or a grenade can take care of it, etc.
Or to try. Hard to say though, because if it's that easy to take care of it, Mira might drop off completely. I don't know. I think that one mirror window is a better step, but I think that both of them are valuable to test, and this is what we should use the test server for. There should be an opportunity for us to test both of these versions of it, and then also maybe give people that use the test server something for them actually using it. For example, a higher chance on alpha packs on the main game, or double renown for playing TTS, something like that. Or after a specific amount of games, you get R6 credits. I don't know. Solve the problem. That's up to Ubisoft how they want to do it and how they want to reward their players, but give them something for it.
Yeah, just do like test server charm, something like that.
Yep. anything.
I used to be
People want something
I
for
used
it.
to be anti. You need to incentivize people to use the test server, and now I'm very firmly let people use the test server. You absolutely should be incentivizing it. It's even with new content now, it's like pathetically low. You'll look on Steam charts, and I know Steam charts isn't the be all end all, but you look on Steam charts and there's like maybe like 1,000 people playing the test server.
Should be more. And if you reward them, how many people will actually play it and figure out different things? And then maybe have these different changes being able to be just swapped around. For example, maybe not that you like have 1 week with this and 1 week with the other, but you at least have it prepared to be tested somewhat close to each other so the game doesn't change too much around. Like you kind of only change around with the Mira rather than changing around a lot of things at the same time. But there needs to be something different that where we can get some use out of the test server. I think it was Usats who said before that the test server isn't really used for anything because the changes that we say to them, it's already kind of set what it's going to be.
I mean, I also think that the test server is titled a little bit, I mean, accurately, but our understanding of what they're testing is wrong. The test server, by and large, is used to test for bugs, not balancing, right? And I know that bugs still make it into the game. I get that. But the purpose of the test server is to make sure that shit's not going to catch on fire when it goes live, not whether Zero needs grenades or not, or Tachanka needs withstand or not, right? We think, and I think we're correct, we think that the test server should be used to test new operators in a particular capacity and give immediate feedback on it. That's the purpose of the play tests, and that's what the test server should be about as well. But it seems like the purpose of the test server is continuously, is this going to crash our servers and destroy the game? No? Okay, cool. The test server did its job. So
why not test both?
That's what I said. It should be both.
Yeah.
It should be. And I think incentivizing people to use the test server is a great idea. Obviously, it's already limited to PC players. Console players don't get access to it. And I hate to say it because console players are going to get angry, but honestly, how much top level feedback are you going to get from console players playing on the test server? You're going to get feedback. It's not going to be, it's unlikely to be aligned with what pro teams scrimming on the TS are going to find. So, but then again, that goes back to the fact that people don't think the game should be certain people don't think the game should be balanced for pro play / top level. So, I mean, we can just talk in circles about that one. But,
well, I, for one, enjoyed when they had Pro League on console, not for the high level of gameplay, but for laughing at the way that they played. So I think that they should have it, but not maybe for the high quality, but for fun.
We're trying to grow 6-on-6's reach in the console market, okay? And you're just destroying it with these...
Lucky for you, I'm not here every week.
Yeah, very lucky for me. Actually, that's correct.
They just have to give the access for keyboard and mouse for them. Like Fortnite,
come on.
Call of Duty, and make all this thing gonna be a mess, you know?
I think give console aim assist. Bring it back.
No.
It doesn't need it. Half of our community came from console, even on PC. But I mean, if TTS is that valuable, then we should be looking to implement it into the main game as an option from the main menu and on all platforms. Like, if it generally is that important for bug testing and for balancing, like I'm pretty sure For Honor, they run theirs through their main client, their test server. I think a lot of titles generally do, all from the same login. So it's to have to download an entire client by itself, and it's a huge file as well. Like, most people's SSDs aren't up to handling it. And there's like in our region, like, we can't get a game on test server, even though we got people that download. You just sit there.
I can't get a game on test server, man.
Hours.
I can't. I wait like 40 minutes.
I mean, that's just I think that would solve a lot of problems, and as well as incentivization. Because if you can get it into your main client, then it's a lot easier to incentivize as well, because things directly, you're earning renown, you're earning packs, these sorts of things. And so if you can implement the TTS into your main client as an option, as an in-game event, if you will, for the TTS, and then have like levels, have like, like a mini battle pass almost, right? Have 10 or 20 levels of test server where you get a legendary pack at the end of it and a couple of purples or something along the way, maybe a charm. and have it on main client. I think that needs to be the objective, right? In terms of like scalability, if you generally want to do it, this should have started a year or two ago. Like, but if it's something that they start looking at or considering now, then like it's already too late. Like, what was the vision of the test server 2 years ago? What was it, scalability, or was it just an afterthought and we just try and force, the sheep through the gate, right?
I mean, if we don't have it now when we should have had it before, is basically like the story of Rainbow Six. We still don't have a replay system yet, even though it was announced when? It was announced at SI last year. Still don't have it.
Yeah.
We finally got the ability to pause the game 5 years after the game launched. We had to fight tooth and nail for a HUD for ages.
Actually, we had pause, and they put out the game, I think in 2017, and never explained why. We had. Now they put again in the game.
Yeah.
And still don't explain why they were not putting in those 3 or 4 years without pause in the game. I don't know what to think about that, because there are some things they add in the game. They don't explain why there wasn't in the last year, in those last years. And
we still only have one spectator slot too. We used to have more than one. We used to have
had two.
Now we have one, unless it's LAN.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't explain why. It's strange, The communication of Ubisoft sometimes it's really awkward.
Yeah.
We have a lot of areas where we don't know anything on what's going on.
Yeah.
It's
we were supposed to have in-game tournaments this year.
Yep.
Sorry?
Remember they announced we're going to have in-game tournaments this year at last SI.
I remember that.
They also announced the World Cup thing, and I think that's just on the back burner. I mean, I guess COVID, but
didn't they say it got postponed till until next year or something?
Yeah, but they announced that while COVID was going on, right? And numerous other issues even within their own esport league. So that was weird timing to me to kind of say, hey, we know all the NAL orgs are leaving, but look, USA, that is kind of random timing.
I mean, I also think that a World Cup is not needed, not this late into the game's lifespan, because then the nationality that wins will be the World Cup champs. But we already have we already fucking argue about world champions are anyway. So it's now we're just
because nobody's gonna skirt I don't know when it would even be, but nobody's gonna practice with the World Cup team over their real team or anything like that. So.
And frankly, I'm just going to look at this from a spectator perspective. How much money do you think they spent to get Tony Parker to do that? And then how much money are they going to spend on the actual event itself? How much money are they going to spend promoting this? And how much of that money could go back towards the esports program?
They're looking at a list of celebrities, how much it costs, and they're they go to the very bottom, and it's Tony Parker, $50. That's how I hope they got there. Out of everybody, they're just yeah, we need Tony Parker to endorse this. That's going to get everybody going. I hope it was near the bottom.
we already have pseudo world championships. BDS is France. Pick any fucking Brazilian team. Most of the major good US teams are entirely American. You've got Geo, who's Mexican. You've got obviously Foxe and Canadian, who are Canadian. But it's you can basically pick an American team, Dark Zero, because Hyper is Greek. No, he's not. He's actually American. I don't know why we keep talking about why he's Greek. It's his lineage is Greek.
His last name has a lot of letters.
That's it. That's all that matters. So it's you get Dark Zero for North America, you get BDS. And I understand they had to institute these wonky rules where they're no more than 2 or 3 players on one team could be on a team. And it's well, but why not? Why do you have to force regions to intermingle? The whole purpose of the World Cup is
Penguin's
marketing.
not gonna play the World Cup.
Sorry?
Penguin's not gonna play the World Cup.
Yeah, because I mean, name one other good Danish player.
I mean, Cyronic did play in a final once back in 115 years ago.
I mean, I will say this, Fabian, you're not good enough for Team Sweden anymore. Would you consider moving
man.
Would you consider moving to Denmark to compete as a Dane?
I need to swallow a potato and learn how to speak with that in first. I don't think that's something I would do. No, I'd rather just sit at home. But then again, all the rules are only to screw over Sweden because we only have one team with 3 Swedes in it, and we have no other Swedes. So it's only to screw us over.
What are you talking about?
Else.
Renewal's retired. Secretly is now gone because Chaos is gone. Red Groove could easily come back. Now you join in. There's 4 of you now. Technically, Chaos getting relegated is the best thing to ever happen to Sweden's national team.
Oh, you hear how silly you sound?
They were thinking ahead. Chaos was so kind to prioritize the World Cup over their own Pro League careers that they got relegated so that they could all reunite to make a tear through the World Cup.
You are so intelligent. They decided that, hey, we're not going to win EUL. We might as well win the World Cup and get ourselves relegated.
And Spoit might be 18 by the time it rolls around next year.
Isn't he just 16?
That didn't stop Fox.
I mean, it's the only thing we have to talk about.
I heard from a reputable North American player that Spoit cheats.
Okay. No.
He's a fellow Canadian like yourself, so you should be aligned with your countrymen. Do you agree with his sentiment?
You can't do this to my country, man. We want to have at least one talent.
I don't know. I saw the World Cup announcement and I was like, hey, like this is cool from the sense that everybody's wanted this. Like people have talked about the World Cup for ages about how badly they want to see these teams compete. I thought it was kind of silly because it's like, if you're going to build a French team, they're not going to let BDS just go. They're going to force them to bring on other players, which is cool to watch. But then at the same time, it's like you're destroying any potential competitive integrity by forcing these teams to mix and mingle. And it's just marketing. That's all it is. And we already have a pretty crammed schedule to begin with. Players are already talking about how they want time off. They get time off from like December to February. Some of these teams that didn't qualify for SI had like December to March off. And they're complaining now that it's too much. No offense, these teams that didn't qualify for SI are sure not going to fucking be qualifying for the World Cup necessarily. And if they do, they're probably not going to be taking it very seriously. It's just eating up valuable time, money, and resources that could be going towards pro play finals, majors, the SI, etc. And if they turn around and that 3-stage, 3-day system I propose, they turn around, they're like, oh, well, it's too much money. Yeah, well, maybe if you didn't have the World fucking Cup, you'd have money to actually put into that program. How much do you think Tony Parker cost? Probably at least $100,000. So it's like, imagine where that money could go.
There's no way Tony Parker costs $100,000. I think Tony Parker could be walking down the street right now. 1 out of 10 people would recognize it.
That's not true. He's a legend.
A legend where?
He's a San Antonio Spurs legend. You're from Texas. You should know this.
He's a garbage player.
I mean, even Seth would cost more money to hire in than that guy, I think.
True. More people might recognize me.
Most likely in Siege community, yes. But look at players in my situation, for example. I come from a country where we're most likely not going to have a chance at all to win that tournament. Basically because we only have, 4 players in the highest league, and then I don't even know if we have anyone in the second tier.
You spoil.
He's 16, so it doesn't really matter. Do you think that I'm going to focus on the struggling team that I have in my professional career that is paying my salary year round? Or do you think I will focus on not winning a tournament with other guys from another team and spend time with them? Like, it's just unrealistic. The teams that don't have a chance to qualify are not going to send up, or the players that are in teams that are struggling are not going to go for that tournament. They're going to stick to their own team because they need to focus on actually making a living.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like the Overwatch World Cup. After the Overwatch World Cup ended, half the team said they didn't even practice. Like, why are you doing this? Why? Like,
I'm pretty sure we would be forced to.
And I mean, I get it for the Overwatch World Cup because it happened during BlizzCon. It happened during like Blizzard's biggest event. There was really nothing else going on. They wanted to bring people in. It was a good way to get people in the door to watch Overwatch. It was a good way to get Overwatch fans in. I understand perfectly why Overwatch did it. And it would be good for us if like the Six Invitational wasn't already a competition. If SI was just 3 days of like Ubisoft and Rainbow Six adoration, then maybe throw the World Cup in there. Cool. Now there's a reason for people to show up. But SI kind of already has an event. And if anybody tells you that the World Cup is bigger than SI, they're fucking lying to your face. So where in the calendar does this fit in? Are we just going to have like a big 3-day event where we fly people in? Well, why do this? Why eat up resources for this? Why not just have a major? I don't know. I don't really get it. I don't understand the World Cup. I'm not a huge fan of it. I never was. Every single time somebody on stream or on Twitter would be like, what about a World Cup? And I'd always say, why? Give me a valid reason why. We already basically have a World Cup with how regional some teams are. So who gives a shit? That's where I'm at.
It's a meme.
Is it?
It's a meme. I just hope every country's just going to send some random ass players from take ranked top list from your country, pick the top 5 and send them away. Have fun.
You're probably got a better chance than putting 5 mismatch pro players, to be fair. The ranked guys will figure it out.
They will not have a chance to get good as a team.
No, but I think that they said that they want us to play and practice with the national team, and that they will pay the organizations for our time. But then again, I'm wasting time practicing with Swedish players rather than focusing on what's going to pay my salary for the next 9 months if shit hits the fan. So it just, those 5 ranked players would also fucking love that shit, and they would actually go there to try to win. I think that most players in the highest leagues, they would just go there to have fun.
That's the thing. It's fun, right? It's a paycheck. It's a paycheck because you're going to win something. But overall, it's marketing. And the other thing too, that everything that we've talked about today and everything that gets brought up is that esports begins to make a lot more sense when you realize that it's not actually about the competition and running a proper league. It's about good marketing. That's what esports is. People freak out and they say, well, why are these skins not banned in pro play? Because they want you to see the skins and buy them. That's why. It doesn't matter if there's any competitiveness behind them or not. Why do you think Ember Rises is so fucking popular? Because you blend in. That's it. And of course they want that marketed into top level play. And the amount of times that I'm sure somebody at Ubisoft would sit down with the executives and make a comment about, oh, we need to make this change. And they'd say, well, we kind of want like to sell skins. Is that going to cost us money? Are we going to see lower profits? Probably. Well, then we don't do it. Fortnite's the biggest example of that. Like, Fortnite would institute a new item the morning before a massive tournament and would not ban it. And next thing you know, the sword, the plane, the mech, like they'd announce these things like 24, 48, 72 hours before a huge tournament. And then the players who've been scrimming and playing without it all of a sudden lose their fucking minds because they're like, oh my God, this fucking infinity sword is in the game and it can kill everybody in one hit and you can fly across the map. And then Epic just goes, yeah, deal with it. Why? Because every little Timmy and Tommy who's watching this on Twitch, all over 1 million of them, are going to see the sword and be like, holy fuck, I need that. And guess what? It works. It works. And then the players lose their minds and then they grumble on Twitter. And then, you know, their 40,000 followers on Twitter see it. And then 52 million people that play Fortnite don't give a single fuck and just go play it anyway.
The winner won the tournament with the sword.
Yep. I hate to say it, and that's the one thing I kind of got to give credit to certain devs that do prioritize esports is that, you know, I don't think for a second that Riot is doing an esports system the way they do out of the kindness of their heart. They're doing it because they can make money off of it, you know, but at the same time, I do appreciate that certain devs have a focus on esports, and I don't necessarily know if all of Ubisoft does. I think Ubisoft has obviously a contingent of people that quite like esports, and the esports teams work pretty hard. But I mean, there's a casual side to it too, and sometimes they win.
Now I'm interrupting you twice, and it's just not getting through, Parker. Now I'm going to talking. But the games that stick along for a long time, they are the competitive games that are focused around, well, competition. Look at Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike has been around for longer than I have been born almost. Well, okay, maybe not me, but well, it's been around longer than Spoit. And that stuff is just crazy. Dota's been around forever as well. League of Legends has been around forever as well. Those games that focus on the competitive aspect of it will have longevity because they are focused on the competitiveness. It is the players that are hardcore and the players that will stick around no matter what happens, as long as the game is good for them, that's going to make a game stay for a long time. There's going to come a game sometime that's going to take shit tons of players from Siege. It's just going to come. Valorant might have taken some from Counter-Strike, but I don't think Counter-Strike has even dipped in players.
No. The
Why
question
is it that those games are...
Is CSGO making the same amount of money by doing this as Call of Duty is? Because every single year there's a new Call of Duty, and every single year it either breaks records or it's the best-selling game of the year. And it makes a shitload of money.
For CSGO skins.
Sorry?
That's where they make money. The market for CSGO skins, that's where they make money.
Oh, absolutely.
Jesus
and
Christ.
CSGO makes a ton of money.
And the boxes that they sell, the keys for it, that's so they make so much money.
Money that goes into making COD and releasing COD yearly and all the tournaments and stuff they do for COD, I'm sure they spend way more money than CSGO is spending yearly on their game, because CSGO has been around for so long where it's just like they don't really have to market it at all. They just release, some new skins, new crates every year. They have tournaments for esports, and the same people that have always been playing it will keep playing it, and then they'll get new players every year. Where COD, they release a new game every year. So every single year they have to market the game. They run all these commercials. They have to, have developers build a whole new game. They have all these tournaments for a new game. Like, the amount of money that COD spends yearly on each game is probably like astronomical compared to what a League or a CSGO is spending on their games. Those games really don't even need to be marketed at this point. Everybody just knows what they are. Or, if you're a newer player, one of your friends is going to be like, hey, have you played CSGO? And then that's how it starts. So I think that those games that's where games aim to be, at a point where they don't even have to market the game to get, traction.
Yeah, there's apparently only like 5 people who work on CSGO, or some stupidly low number as well.
I think COD's MTX is insane as well, though. Like, rumor has it they made like $500 million from the dogs alone.
Yeah, all the in-game items for sure. Yeah,
and it's for free. You play for free those games. This helps a lot to me.
Yeah,
I think it's just that's their audience, right? Like, CS is used to their game, and the COD players are used to a new game every year, and I think that's what they do. I think, how they handle Warzone is going to be a different learning curve for them. I think all in all, they probably did the right thing, trying to how they're implementing the game, but I think it's sort of like what they're used to. I think it's hard to compare either of them each way, because like Overwatch, I think is sort of tried to do its own thing and it failed. So I think they sort of might be stuck in their own ecosystem in terms of what their players expect from each individual developer as well.
That's true. I mean,
whereas
obviously,
like Siege for Ubi, they haven't had a game like this, right? Vegas was out for a few years. They release a new Assassin's Creed every other year. Most of their titles, are linear storytelling. They haven't had a game like this, so they sort of are getting through it the best way they can.
I think it's pretty safe to say that for most of the earnings calls that we see, this is absolutely Ubisoft's cash cow. I mentioned earlier that SI is Rainbow Six's biggest event. It's Ubisoft's biggest event. Ubisoft does not have a BlizzCon. Six Invitational is probably the closest thing that they're ever going to get to that, unless they start doing like UbiCon or something. Because SI is more than just the competition. SI is also all about community and stuff like that. And it's really big at bringing in content creators and having content creators show matches and having cosplayers show up and going through the history of Rainbow Six, which I think is awesome. I as a caster, I don't know if any of you guys did, because all of us are there under very different circumstances. But I don't know if any of you got a chance at the last SI to actually wander the concourse and look at all the stuff they had last year. It was incredible. Things like early stills of the game, early footage, in development, concept art, you know, little trinkets and mementos of past events, and recognizing certain players and talking about, you know, certain teams. It was so cool. It's amazing. The team at Ubisoft, which was a lot of people, but Laura was a big part of it. Stuart was a big part of it. Wei was a big part of it. Max, etc. All of the team that worked on SI last year from UB Montreal did such a good fucking job. And they all deserve just so much credit for the presentation of it. Just if I was to go to that event as a spectator, I would have more than gotten my money's worth. Obviously, I was there to work it, so I had a very different view of it. But it was incredible, and I'm sure that people that went can say the same thing. And SI's only gotten better year over year. So for Ubisoft, it kind of blows me away that Rainbow Six is its cash cow. What was it? 2 years ago, it brought in $600 million in revenue, which obviously is not all profit. It was actually their second highest grossing game, I think, after some Shark mobile game, I think was like their highest grossing game. Mobile games make an absurd amount of money. But then you're right. Every other game that they put out, even the ones that are games as a service, like For Honor, like The Division, you know, like Ghost Recon, they make a fraction of the money. And even though Assassin's Creed comes out, and this year in particular, Assassin's Creed came out at the perfect time because Cyberpunk had been pushed back, and Assassin's Creed came out and it broke all the records for Assassin's Creed launches, etc. That's basically a one-time payment. You can't really monetize Assassin's Creed the same way that you can monetize Rainbow Six. So it does kind of puzzle me that they don't. I don't want to say they treat Rainbow Six better, but it does kind of puzzle me that they don't invest more into it, given its place in Ubisoft's catalog.
Yeah, I think especially our MTX is really lacking. We could be doing so much more.
Especially our skins. MTX. Can we talk about our skins, please?
Yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I maybe play 3 games of Valorant every quarter, and I probably spend more on that than I do Siege. Right? Like, for the most part, I think there's so much more we could be doing in MTX as a whole. In operator gadgets, in like gun skins, just everything. I think our MTX is super underwhelming, and you know I honestly think Ubisoft could be like nearly doubling their revenue their revenue from Siege.
Yep.
I mean, you look at the different quality on skins. That, for example, look at Dark Zero skin. How good isn't that one? And the last one, and well, Sonic skin as well, for that matter. They look sick. Why haven't we gotten that at all, or anything even close to it in 5 years? What would be the coolest skin after that? Anyone has an idea?
I mean, you have to go back to Red Crow, I think, to be honest.
I mean, people talk about Black Eyes and the Glacier skins. That's year 1, season 1. So for 5 years, we have, well, those 2 that were sold in bundles back in year 1, season 1, and now year 5. Why haven't we had anything during that time?
I still have the best skin from Termite, from the year 1 Pro League.
Oh, the blue and gold one?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the most beautiful skin they ever made for Termite. And I agree with Fabian. 5 years to get a little bit close to that, it's too much.
I mean, I think the answer is obvious there because, you know, Fabian brought up our skin and Dark Zero's skin. We outsourced that. We had, you know, Deadbird, who's a pretty well-known, like, community graphic guy. Now I think he's the head for Dark Zero. I literally DM'd him and said, hey, do you have the ability to make a gun skin? And from there, you know, he ended up making ours and Dark Zero's. And in my opinion, they're by far the 2 best in the game. They're the most creative. So, and then, you know, that kind of inspired a lot of other people. You see all kinds of great designs out there from community people. There's a lot of talented people in the community. So why, you know, what's stopping Rainbow from going like a CSGO route and having community skins made, you know, once or twice a year? How much revenue would that bring in? You know, you just have these really original skins once or twice a year on so-and-so weapons. They'd probably be the best skins in the game from the designs I've seen. I don't like And I know Ubisoft likes to involve the community and do stuff like that. So I really don't see how that hasn't been a like something that they've thought of doing yet.
Community.
Yeah, or content.
Imagine making a new page inside the game where before, or like a month before every like DLC comes out, you have a page where you can vote. You have 10 votes or something like that, and they put up 50 skins or they put up 100 skins, and you can give those skins 1 point or 2 points depending on what you feel like, and then put in the top 15 skins, top 20 skins into the game, and put them with the content creator that made them. They make a cut of that, and Ubisoft takes the rest, like they do with the skins for the pilot program, obviously. Imagine if they did a split like that. Imagine how many people would invest their time into making sick ass skins, because they, first of all, they could make money out of it, and they could also get their skin into a game.
I also like how both Dizzle and Meli went to speak at the same time, stopped. Both went to speak again, stopped, and then instead of letting one of them go, Fabian just jumped in. Start talking and stuff.
You go. Violence, momentum.
You go, Meli.
They need to do exactly what CS:GO do on Steam. The Steam market, they need to let the community do the job. You know, CS:GO, Dota 2. They let the community do the job, and they do really good. They really do really well, you know. So I don't know what they are waiting for doing this. I saw Mountain Shield with Beskar, the item from the Mandalorian, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, Beskar Steel.
Yeah.
The Beskar Steel, yes. Sometimes words, I forgot some words, but yes, the Beskar Steel, and it was really amazing, man. It was from a fan of Rainbow Six. It was made from a fan of Rainbow Six. Let those guys do the job, man. It's simple as that.
This is the thing that I've spoken to Ubisoft employees about in the past, was we did have community made skins. We had the Valentine's Day skin, if I remember correctly, was made by somebody. Valentine's Day skin was made in collaboration with somebody.
The Space Invader one. I still use that to this day. The Space Invader for Mutes MP5K with my white noise charm. Looks like the little Space Invader.
I mean, I don't know exactly which one it is. I do know that we've just done it in the past, and it's happened in the community. And then I remember I just had a conversation with somebody at Ubisoft, and I said, why don't you let people design skins and then just like either pay them a revenue cut or something like that? And they say, oh, well, it's a legal headache. And it's like, I can see that, but at the same time, then just like bring these people on and pay them like a set amount or something like that. You know, like Deadbird makes great stuff. Is it the kind of stuff that we're used to seeing in Rainbow Six? Absolutely not. But it's great. You know, it's got that hype beast kind of merch style, which seems to be taking over most esports, and Valorant has based most of its identity around. And I think it looks really good. You know, and I hate to be critical of the Ubisoft art team because I know that they do good work, but I find so many gun skins and uniform reskins are just absolutely uninspired. Do we need another gray or red variant of the same Ash headgear or the same Jaeger headgear just with a different gray or blue tint? No, we don't. We don't need that. Like, and then I see all these pictures at the start of every single season where, you know, Legion's cardboard T5 SMG, or that one Zero gun, a Zero's weapon, where it's got like the wolf howling and the Cosmos in the background, or like the Nook headgear mop. That's cool as hell. But the problem is that most of the really good skins get tucked away in alpha packs and you're never going to get them. And both Pengu and Macy did some basic math and realized that with how much they've played, they are still missing a substantial portion of stuff that other people have. And there's no way for them to get it.
It's still weird that you can't purchase alpha packs at this point. Like, I would think that would be something you could buy by now.
Gambling is the issue there. A lot of countries block that because of because of gambling laws. But I think all you need to do to solve that is create a rotating store, a weekly store or a daily store. Valorant obviously having huge success out of it. People are logging on every day to spend $60 on whatever dagger's up. Destiny's, that their entire models survived off that for nearly fucking 10 years. So I think all you need is in your store, just have a rotating store tab. And two of these legendaries pop up every other week, every 3-4 days. People, and it costs real money, right? Make it cost R6 credits. It doesn't have to cost renown, and instantly you've got another revenue option that people don't need to spend if they don't want it. But someone that's happy to spend $10 or something on these items will happily every 3 days log in.
It's not even $10, Dizzle. Some of the skins in Valorant are $40 fucking.
I spent $60 on a knife on Valorant. Yeah,
I looked up a knife that was in my Valorant store the other night, and after tax and fees and conversion, it came to like $54 Canadian for a digital knife. And you know what?
And
I see that same knife in game almost every other game, so people are buying it. Like,
I think I've
just give us a rotating store.
Did you say, Fabian?
I think I've spent more money on Valorant than I have on Siege. And I played maybe 100 Valorant games in total. And I spent more money on that game than I have on Siege.
Yeah.
I did not buy the knife for the
rotating store.
By the way.
Bring back old seasonal ones that, our community has grown exponentially in the last 4 years. Like back when Red Crow was around, like when Habana would crash entire lobbies, like that was some of the darker days of Siege. And the community can't even get some of the best seasonal skins from Red Crow. Like, put them in the rotating store, have an old seasonal skin appear, like have one or two of those, have a rare charm, or like the cupcakes, dinosaurs, like all these things that have been there. Like you could easily come up with 5 or 6 items to rotate through that store weekly for real money, R6 credit to be purchased for an MTX.
Doji charm.
I agree.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've said as well, which has gotten no traction, was I talked to somebody from Ubisoft a while back. And the way that I was led to believe was that because they marketed some of these skins as limited time only, they worry about what happens if they reintroduce these skins now. And I said,
you could piss off like people who have them already.
And I think that's fucking dumb. There's no trading in this game. The people who complain that are like, but it shows that I was around at the beginning. Fuck off. Like, I can't stand that. I'm sorry. It makes me so angry when people do that. Like, cool. You played the game before other people.
I think I should be rewarded for that.
I think INTERRO sounds like someone who's mad he doesn't have Glacier.
Yep. Sounds like it.
Like, if they want better servers, better infrastructure, better anti-cheat, this all costs money.
Yep.
Like, that's where they're going to get it from, is from your precious skin.
It will also cut down on the amount of people who have phishing attempts for older accounts as well. Like, look at how many people specifically yoink or sell accounts because they have Glacier on it. And one thing that I've suggested is, okay, so you don't want to re-release Black Ice, you don't want to re-release Glacier, you don't want to re-release some of the early pro skin sets, etc. You don't want to bring back some early seasonal skins. Fine. Here's a good middle ground. Every single year, for the road to SI, you take the SI logo, that's 6, and the little thing behind it, whatever exact shape that is, you slap it on the gun, you put the year underneath it, and you re-release some of the old skins with the new SI branding on a corner of it to distinguish A, this is here to promote the SI, and B, it's different from all the little precious snowflakes that need to have their original skins and need to feel good because they were here in the game. And you create like an SI store or even put them in fucking SI packs where you have to pay real money for them like they've done before. Re-release some of the old seasonal skins, re-release the Crossfader skin, re-release the Red Bull skin that everybody's been talking about recently, re-release some of the Red Crow skins as well with I think the nicest one is it's got like the white doves on it or whatever.
I think it's a crane, but yeah.
It can be a crane, whatever. Put the Six Invitational logo on it, sell it for real money. Put that money towards SI, put that money towards esports, put that money towards the servers. Who knows? Literally do that. And then just sell it for Six Invitational. And that's the only time it's available. And then people spend real money on it. Cool, easy, look like that. You just made a ton of money.
Take away the randomness. Don't give it in packs. Just you can choose which skin you want to buy. You can put a little bit higher price on it, probably because of that, and just don't do the packs. Just, I want that skin. That's the skin I'm going to buy. You want to buy them all in a pack? Do it like Valorant. You can buy an entire bundle. Here you go. These are the skins you get.
Yep. The problem is that selling individual skins in Rainbow Six would be a lot of money, right? Like the thinking behind it is that people will spend. It's nefarious. It's designed to try and pick away at our gambling obsessions that we all have, because if you were to buy a skin by itself, it might cost you $10-15. But if you can buy like the 2 or 3 skins you want, you're spending less than the $70 to buy all the skins. And I'll be totally honest, like the Gold Rush or whatever. What was the money heist event that it was called, where you had to get the safes open? Remember that one? What was that one called?
Oh yeah, the one where you shot them through the floor and they just
Yeah. Grand Larceny. That's right. There was like 2 good skins in that whole thing. So I have 2 options. Either I gamble on getting the skin I want, or I have to buy all $70 worth of the packs. If I wanted to buy the skins on my own, then I'd just spend $20 to $30 and get the 2 skins I want and walk away. But people are going to feel compelled to spend the full $70 because they don't really have a lot of options, right? That's the purpose, is that they want you to spend the full $70 because most of the skins are, in my opinion, pretty bland. I don't want them.
Yeah.
But do you think that people would buy that then?
Yeah, so my feedback on this was, if it costs $70 for the full bundle, don't make the skins $5 a pop. Make them $15 a pop, right? So if I want 2 skins, you're going to get $15 a skin. You're going to get $30 to $50 for the 2 skins, as opposed to $70 for the lot, because then it's value add, right? It's the same thing like that fast food has been doing for decades. The large is $1 extra, right? And you won't go small to large, so medium is the price they sell you at, so you then go, well, I'll just get the large for an extra $1. So if they dead set on a budget only want 2 skins, they'll spend $30 to $40. And you'll get the $30 to $40 out of me, where you're dividing a lot of the market, it's either 0 or 70. And so they don't have that price leader to then walk people up to the 70. And so for me, for the Mute Protocol, for the Grand Larceny, they got $0.
Yeah, I didn't buy a single Grand Larceny pack. And I didn't buy a single one of the Halloween packs either, because there was like 2 skins in it I wanted.
Yeah. But they would have got $50 from each of them from me if they had done it the other way, or $50 over 2, right? Yep. So I think there's a lot of revenue being missed there from, and I imagine if there's already 2 of us out of this call, we're already 33%, something like that, nearly 50% of this call shares that sentiment. And if that rings true across the entire player base, then there's millions being lost.
Did either of you buy any of the Grand Larceny or the new Halloween packs?
No.
I don't buy the skins anymore because you can't wear them in comp, so it's pointless.
Meli said no. Fabian, did you?
I said no.
So none of us bought the Halloween or Grand Larceny packs?
No.
None of us. I mean, not that obviously we speak for everybody, but I'm sure that there were people that were in the same boat. And I can tell you right now that if they'd sold those skins individually, I would have spent some money. But the question that then needs to be answered is, would us spending $15, $20, $30 here or there make up for the other people who almost assuredly bought the whole set because they wanted 1 or 2 skins? Because that has to have happened.
All they need to do is do it the next launch, the next event they have, run it like that, and look at the revenue and see if it works or not. Like, worst case scenario, maybe they've lost out on a bit of revenue and it hasn't worked that way. But I personally can't imagine a world in which they lose that much for that exercise to know.
I mean, they have people that they hopefully pay lots of money that look at the numbers and come to a decision, right? Like, how are you maximizing your revenue? So
yeah.
It's like I said, people like to collect. I have all the elite skins, but do I like all the elite skins? No, but I want to have them. You know, some people like to have unique things, and this works for every game. And of course, it's gonna work with Rainbow Six too. I don't know. They have to release those old skins again.
In some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Fortnite did it, and look at the success they had when they brought back some of those skins.
Yes.
People literally reinstalled the game just to buy them.
I think
never
people
play the game
underestimate how much we'll spend on virtual outfits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at how much do you think Seth paid for that sweater?
What?
Probably,
I mugged
probably.
somebody for it. I paid nothing.
You mugged somebody for it.
Yeah.
I think he said begged, but we just didn't hear it.
No, I mugged. I live in Harrisburg, so it's rough out there in the streets.
Okay.
You never know what happens.
Wait, you saw a DC fan on the street? I didn't think they have those.
It does kind of look like the DZ shirt, yeah.
No, I thought it was. Oh, whatever.
It's a
I don't see
Supreme
it.
on
Too
it.
grainy.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I've never seen a Dark Zero fan in person, but I hear them on Twitter a lot.
That's because you never make it to LAN.
I
That is
think
'cause
honestly it's because they don't go to LAN because they already know they're going to lose. So why would you fly out to be disappointed?
Just their
It's
entire
Russian
business
bots.
models online.
Oh, I'm a fan of everybody. So technically, you met me. What do you have to say about that?
You can't be a fan of everybody.
Okay, well,
He doesn't like our team very much.
me?
Yeah.
I like Fnatic. I've asked to cast you guys. I will secretly say I do not ask to cast certain teams all the time, but two teams that I have asked to cast multiple times happen to be NiP and Fnatic. So,
Because they're always bangers.
I mean,
Actually,
you guys also played like
Brazil
5
loves
matches
Fnatic
against each
too.
other in Paris as well. So,
The Brazilian
Us and
community
Nick. Oh,
love
yeah.
a lot Fnatic.
it's hard to
They do.
dislike Fnatic.
Yes.
I find.
People manage.
We're making well on time right now, by the way. It's about 3 hours. We can find one last topic and then conclude. And I think that the topic that we should go on is SI predictions. I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable spot, but we got to make some predictions and I'll join in as well. Let's pick the 4 teams that go home from groups and then the final 4 teams at the entire event. And I'll start with Fabian, who
I
is
have to go to
currently
Liquipedia
finding it
page.
on Wikipedia.
Yeah, let's see. All right.
4 teams that go home from groups, 4 teams that make it to the finals, the final 4. And chat interaction, by the way, is welcomed. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to put your prediction in the comments below. If you're watching this on Twitch, you can put it in the chat right now. Who's going out first? Who's making final 4? Fabian, start.
Cloud9 goes out together with Furia from Group A. And I think that Wildcard will go out together with Altiora, or however that's pronounced. Top 4 is going to be G2, BDS, NIP, and TSM.
Okay.
BDS is going to win it.
BDS, G2, NIP, and TSM. All right.
And G2 is going to lose it in the grand final.
You think
That's
it'll be
it.
BDS,
I
G2 in the finals?
Yeah, I can't let them win, obviously, because, again, win percentage of attended invitationals is supposed to be mine, so I need to be... G2 is not allowed to win. 66% of invitationals won to the attended invitationals. That's a good number. It's going to be the highest number after February.
For crying out loud. All right, Dizzle. Who do you think goes out first? 2 from A, 2 from B. Who makes it to the finals? Keep in mind that you don't need to pick groups for the finals. If anybody's watching this and they go to the Wikipedia page, that because there's a losers bracket, the finals could be both teams from the same group, but 2 teams will be going out from each group.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be Wildcard and Altiora from Group B. Mkers did just lose their regional Italian final, though, so...
With the coach playing.
Yes, but I feel like Mkers have the aggression that's needed to win a few games that maybe they might not. Like, they might be able to get a win over Oxygen or something like that, I think. It's a tough bracket, but maybe they can upset an SSG or something like that, just with how aggressive they are. I think Wildcard might be a little too fundamental for the BO1s, which is the only reason I'm sort of passing it on to them. The rest, I mean, you've got some absolute juggernauts in Group B. I think that's a tough group for those 3 teams. A, I think, yeah, likely Furia. Maybe Cyclops. Cyclops or C9. I think they both got the potential to get it out. I just don't know who would drop down. Maybe FaZe in an absolute upset, right? They've been a shadow of their former self. But C9 and Cyclops, I think, can actually do quite well. I just think the others are all super strong in there as well. So, maybe FaZe on an outlier might go out. I think top 4 is likely to be G2, TSM, Ninjas, maybe even a DZ, I think.
Okay.
It's land, Dizzle.
Well, we don't know that yet, right? Like, we don't know. It might actually be played online, just in a physical vicinity. So we need a bit more information there. But yeah, I think Liquid could be a strong chance as well. I think I don't know, DZ just seem like a bit of dark horses to me. I think TSM's been a lot stronger throughout the year, but they were a team that we've always struggled playing against. Like most teams at the SI, they were the ones, like at last SI we played like Empire and FaZe, right, to come out of groups into G2, into TSM, into BDS, and DZ I think were a lot more uncomfortable for us to play against, just their play style. So
Did
a few teams might struggle.
DZ, like when you played DZ, did they have time to prep for you?
No.
Okay.
They just did things really in an unorthodox fashion. And being that there's not a lot of NA teams up there, they might be able to get away with it, If they can come out top of that group, then they're in a really good spot to make top 4, I think. And I think just with the fashion that they play in, they might be able to get away with it, because most of the other NA teams that are used to it are down the bottom. So I think it's going to come down to if DZ's playstyle goes really well against the G2 and BDS, but if they can finish it at the top of that group, I think they'll make a pretty deep run. I don't know if they have enough to win it, but I think they got enough to make top 4.
All right. Meli, which two teams go out from Group A? Which teams go out from Group B? Who makes the Final 4?
For me, Furia and Cyclops, not gonna make it. Group B, maybe Altiora and Mkers. I don't know about Mkers because I haven't seen them play, and it's first LAN. So let's see what they are all about in this LAN. The 4 teams, I think it's gonna be BDS, G2, NIP, maybe Liquid, maybe SSG. If SSG goes to the finals, and TSM, it's so hard, man. It's really hard to predict the last 4, but to be honoring the 2020, I want to see SSG and NIP in the finals again.
Okay.
So SSG, NIP, D2, and TSM.
Supr, you get the final word.
For Group A, I think Furia and FaZe don't make it. If not FaZe, Cyclops. I think FaZe are horrible. They shouldn't have even qualified, but the LATM rules for their season and how they award points actually gave them way more points the second split than they should have had. I think FaZe actually finished 8th or 9th in their region, the second phase. They're pretty far down there. And then for Group B, I think Wildcard and Altiora are out. I could see Wildcard maybe potentially sneaking in ahead of Mkers, just because Wildcard actually do have a good amount of lane experience. For the top 4, I think it will be TSM. I think TSM wins everything, but I think TSM, SSG, Dark Zero, and NIP.
Just Wildcard they've made 2 roster changes since last SI, so there's 2 that haven't been to LAN.
Okay. Isn't they just play the Wildcard's been playing on LAN though, right? The thing they just played for the qualifiers, was that on LAN? It wasn't? Okay.
No, all online, and they lost to Knights in the Oceanic region.
Yeah, I did
but
see
they've
that.
been in good form up until then. I think a bad day from them, but yeah, I think they have potential to make it out. It'll be close between those three. I think it's going to come down to who can get a win against the other teams when they shouldn't. I think it could come down to like one game to decide that spot.
So I guess that leaves me here to make my predictions. I don't think any of us are really going to disagree all that much. For Group B, I think Altiora is going to go out dead last. I think that they are the least structured. They have the least experience on LAN, and I think that because of their roster turmoil, I kind of agreed with you earlier, Seth, where you said it can go either way. Either they're going to come in and play really hungry, or they're going to come in and they're going to be really overwhelmed. I think they're going to be going in, and I honestly think they're going to be super discouraged. They realize that the reality for them to play in the NAL is probably gone, if not almost all gone. And I think that's it for Altiora. I think they finished dead last. Honestly, I want to say that Mkers would join them, but I literally counted against Mkers every single step of the way. Wildcard is probably the smart money, but I'm gonna say Mkers as well. I think that their run that they went through is good, but I think that the magic ends there. For Group A, I agree. I don't think FaZe makes it. I think FaZe and Furia are the two teams that are going to go out. I mean, I think best of ones will benefit both FaZe and Furia. I mean, as structurally bad as FaZe has been, this is still a team with Ion, Astro, and Yuna on it. I mean, they have so much experience and they've played so well, and Astro can just absolutely consume games on LAN by himself. I think the supporting cast with KDS and Live's a little weaker, but at the end of the day, I think FaZe can probably squeak through. I think Furia probably goes out dead last, and then FaZe joins them, and if not FaZe, then yeah, it's probably going to be Cyclops. We had high expectations of Cyclops going into Raleigh, and they ended up being, I think, statistically the worst team at Raleigh, despite us kind of thinking that they would be okay. So I'm a little bit hesitant to give Cyclops that nod. Final four.
Yeah.
Sorry?
So they've come a long way, and I think 5 for 5, they're better than FaZe.
Possibly. I mean, the thing here is best of ones for me, right? Like, if Astro gets hot for 2 or 3 games, I think FaZe can steal a match or two here, and that might be the difference to keep them in the groups. Like, FaZe might finish, technically 8th, but they still live to see another day, right? So that's just where I'm kind of at. Final four, I think we're all going to be pretty much aligned. I think NIP and TSM are no-brainers. I think G2 makes it, and I mean, I'm gonna throw out a curveball here. I'm gonna say that Liquid makes it as well. So I think it's gonna be TSM, NIP, G2, and Liquid in the finals. I think that BDS and SSG have outside chances as well. I think a lot of people are sleeping on SSG. But at the end of the day, I think the smart money is on that. And I don't know. I just have a good feeling about Liquid right now. I've had a good feeling about Liquid all year. So those are my final and top 4. And we can.
They lost 3-0 against MIBR in the BR6.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that
it's the land fact, I know. I want to say.
I know, but it's just like the problem with me and Liquid is that Liquid is just they either show up to an event and they stink and they get slaughtered, or they show up to an event and they just look unbeatable until they have one really bad game and then they fall apart. Yeah. So it's so hard to gauge Liquid.
Where I think a lot of the other teams are more, they have everybody. I feel like Liquid is kind of like almost in a way like BDS, where like they're really reliant on certain players to kind of pop off for them, and it's not like it's not necessarily like a shared load for everyone,
Yeah, I mean, I know Liquid is kind of the outside pick here. My finals is probably TSM NIP. That's my finals. Right now, I have no reason to think that TSM is going to slow down. And at the moment, I think TSM is probably playing the best Rainbow Six across all maps and all sides in the moment and across the globe, I think that BDS is probably second, but I'm wary of how BDS is going to do on LAN, because typically they live and die off of Shaiko on LAN. Now they've got Bride, so who knows how that's going to work. But if Shaiko has a bad map or two, I'm still kind of, I don't know if that's enough for BDS to go all the way. Which the same thing applies for Liquid. Fair enough.
I think G2 just has a deeper pool of players to rely on. I think BDS, we saw it in the EUL that, you know, when one or two of them falter, then that's sort of done and dusted. But I think G2 have enough depth in their lineup that if Kanto's been quiet, which has been the year for him, you know, Citizen and Virtue have been a really, really good addition for them and quite flexible in what they play. So I think there's more depth there. I think if Canto is struggling, which has been a bit of a pattern, he can be moved back a little bit and bring Virtue up, because, you know, he started off playing more as support lineup and then moved back more towards his natural entry. So I think all in all, for the depth that they need to run, I just think G2 has more horses to bet on. I think BDS only have a two-pronged approach, and I don't think it's enough to get you through SI.
That's kind of where I'm at with BDS as well.
You just said they're the second best team.
Yeah, but second best team, but to be the second best team going into the event doesn't mean you're going to be the second best team at the event.
It's honestly hard for me to predict, because like the way it works, any of the teams could potentially play each other in the bracket, and I feel like certain regions match up with other regions better than others. So like I honestly think you could have up to like 8 different teams make it to the final 4, just depending on how the bracket works, because as we discussed with best of ones, the bracket could be weird, and you could have, you know, I don't know, like Liquid playing Dark Zero in the first round or something. Like you could have some juggernaut matches like really early in the bracket, which, you know, might mess up who actually makes the finals.
If G2 plays NA teams, they're gonna slaughter them, and if they play Brazilian teams, they're gonna falter. That's always how that team has been in the group of players that I know from it. It's just something with Brazilian players that just, I don't know, they read how G2 plays as a group very well, and NA teams don't seem to do it. And G2 both this roster obviously because they've never played NA, but even back from when we were Penta, we have never lost with that group of players against an NA team ever.
I mean, it could be the same for the APAC teams then as well. C9 and Cyclops play exactly like the Latin American teams do. They just throw bodies at you. You cannot have 2 people on drones against some of the APAC teams.
Last question before we go. We have not mentioned a number of teams. MIBR came up as a strong contender. Haven't really said that much about them. Empire got mentioned as well. DZ got a brief mention. SSG. Virtus Pro hasn't been talked of at all. If our predictions are wrong, what's the one dark horse team that you think has the best legitimate shot to upset and make it either into the final 4 or possibly even the finals?
Team 1.
You think it's Team 1?
Yes. They're young. They're hungry for a victory. They want to show everyone how good they are, and maybe Team 1 can be the underdog.
I'll stick to MIBR. I think that if they fire on all cylinders, anything can happen for that team.
Maybe Cloud9. I think, as usual, a lot of people won't watch APAC. We'll just base it off previous games that they've watched or experienced. I think, you know, Cloud9's done really well in the region, and I think the players have developed quite significantly, and they've always been pretty competitive, and they've had some tough brackets at matches they have gone to. So I think C9 have potential to be a dark horse.
I don't know if I've heard of dark horses, but I don't think they're kind of being mentioned for as good as they are, and I would just go Dark Zero and SSG. You know, they've been mentioned, but SSG is almost being like looked over as like they have no chance of winning. And I disagree. I mean, if you told me Dark SSG won or made the finals again, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And even the same for Dark Zero, like even I give them shit for like doing bad on LAN, but they don't really do bad on LAN. I mean, even at the last invite, I think they finished top 4 or top 6. So like, I think they're obviously certainly a contender for the top 4. I honestly think like this kind of goes against what you said, but I think OXG is going to be like super disappointing. And I think because they normally make like top 8. I think Fox A's teams have always gone like in that top 8 area. I think they go out. I don't think they lose in groups, but I don't think they make it I don't think they make top 8 for sure. I think they're in like a really weird place as a team right now.
I agree with you. I don't have a lot of faith in OXG. When I look at these teams, like I don't necessarily think we'll see deep runs from Cloud9, FaZe, OXG, VP, like, and then the bottom 4, I like Cyclops, Mkers, Altiora, Fury. I don't think we're going to see deep runs from them. You can add wildcard to that as well. The sleeper pick for me, the no-brainer is Space Station, just because we haven't talked about it. And, everybody's focusing on TSM, but it's like outside of some disappointing like online matches, Space Station, when they try, and I don't think their performance in the NA League finals the other week was trying at all. When they try, they're still able to hang with the best team. They're still able to hang with TSM, and they're still able to hang with DZ on their best days. I think that SSG to me is the no-brainer, but I'm going to go with Team Empire. Like, everybody's sleeping on Team Empire. They looked really good in the November major. It seems like they've fixed a lot of their issues. This is a team where both Dan and Joystick on LAN are absolute fucking monsters, and it seems like they managed to fix the supporting cast behind them, and it would not surprise me if Empire makes Final Four. I don't think they will, but same with you, Seth. If somebody said that Team Empire made the Final Four, I wouldn't be too surprised. I will say if Team Empire is making the Final Four, I think that BDS and G2 probably are, and we end up seeing a really big European heavy finals. That's where my head's at. So you're welcome to disagree. I actually kind of want your opinion on that, Fabian. You haven't really talked about Empire.
I don't know. It's just hard to see. I feel like we have BDS and G2 being the 2 strongest contenders from Europe. I disagree with Dark. Like you don't think that Virtus Pro can go deep. I think that almost all teams from EU can go fairly deep, depending on who they face, depending on how they show up at the day. Obviously, the only team I wouldn't say go far is Mkers from Europe, and everyone else could make top 8 with some luck and also with their skill. It's very hard to say, but there's so many teams that you can get those teams that, like, we haven't talked about in top 4. Well, all of those teams that we place from maybe spot 5 up to 10, it's a toss-up. It depends on who plays who and which team is having a good week.
Which map?
Yeah, there's so many factors into this. I say that any of the teams that I place from top 1 to spot number 10 could win the tournament. They could. But then I just take it out of who I know and what I know from those teams playing, and I'll put them in a specific order. But it's in the end, I'll probably have 0 out of 4 if I placed those 4 teams like that. I could put them, say TSM first and BDS second. If I miss those, then I'm 0 out of 2. But any one of the teams that I place 1 to 10, I think could win the tournament.
If you show me a bracket after the group stage, I could have a completely different top 4 for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure regions match up better against each other. Even certain teams match up better against certain teams. So we're making predictions just based off of groups, but with the way they're seeding it, like literally there could be any combination for the top 4 out of like Fabian said, like a group of 10 teams. Anybody could make it, just depending on how it's seeded.
Yeah. We could have like a first round where, you've got TSM playing G2, and you've got SSG playing NIP in like the first round. So
if you look at Group B, you're almost guaranteed that you're going to have like Dark Zero or SSG or TSM playing like a top seed very early, because all 4 of the best NA teams are in the same group, except besides Dark Zero. So you could potentially have Dark Zero playing like SSG in the first round.
Yeah.
Or Liquid has to play SSG first round because, all the LATM teams are in A and basically all the NA teams are in B. You could have some weird brackets for sure.
The only team I really don't see making is Vitality. I don't see them making the finals, mainly because they're not in the tournament.
Very good. I was actually going to ask this: any teams that didn't make SI that you think deserve to be there but didn't make it? because I know that there's some teams that probably are weaker than other teams in the world. And I mean, we can do that one really quickly. Are there any teams that didn't make it that you think, not that you like, because I know there's going to be people who respond to this who like, oh, I would have loved to see, like, no offense, Dizzle, Fnatic there, but Fnatic were frankly, they are just.
I'll go ahead and say that Sonics with our roster before we benched anybody, we were better than OXG. We just never played them. And I think we would have definitely won the Invitational qualifier with our actual roster. Obviously, our org decided to go a different way, but I think we were probably the fourth best team. I don't think we would have won invite or, done anything crazy maybe, but I think we're better. I think that team was better than OXG, and I mean, there's no way in hell we would have lost to Rent Free or Altiora with like a practice team, in my opinion.
It can be any region, by the way. It can be any region. It doesn't need to be it doesn't need to just be your own region.
I think from APAC, Xavier esports, they've they're a menace. They play the game at a completely different level, and they're probably better than 30% of the teams there. It just came down to like them and Cyclops had a bloodbath to qualify, but Xavier have beaten every single team from APAC, and sometimes in convincing fashions. They're probably better than a lot of the qualified teams that are there. I think the only reason they didn't make it is they had a really bad first split and didn't do too well. But after that, they nearly went like 10 straight, which is the same that Giants did on the back half. So I think Xavier would have been not a dark horse to go deep into the competition, but they would have upset a lot of teams, I think, with how they play the game. Like, this is a team that, like, the last time we played them on LAN, it was like Finker Rushers, Blackbeards, like they just come at you in ways you've never thought of, and it is when you have to call a timeout to like tell a team, hey, pick Doc, pick Rook, go your 3 armors because you just have to win against an entire Finker boosted team rushing a breach. Like, because sometimes that's all it is, right? Like, that's just how they play the game. And it seems silly, but if you're doing a consulate hold and they just want a 5-man rush you, and one round it's from Yellow Stairs, one round it's from Garage, they're a very tough team to play against mentally to understand what they're doing. So I think they would have been a good team to watch, hopefully next year.
Well, next time, I really want to see INTZ in the Invitational because they did really good in the qualify. They are a really good team. They have the best bomb retakes on Latin tournaments, the BR6 and majors. They have strong players that can play in 1v1, 1vx situation. Actually, I was rooting for INTZ to go to the Invitational, but Fury got the spot.
Fabian, you're last.
I don't know. If you didn't make it, you didn't deserve it. That's the way I see it. If you couldn't beat the teams that you were fighting against, you don't deserve to be there. Simple as that. Or you could just give another pit invite to me. I don't really mind that. Free money, free travel,
That's a cop-out. I want a real answer from you.
No, that's the way I see it. If you couldn't make it, you shouldn't be there. That's as simple as it is. And that's how it should be for every tournament.
I think it's a normal viewpoint to have. When I look at the teams that didn't make it from NA, if we're imagining that the teams that are being replaced are Mkers, Cyclops, Furia, and Altiora. For me, I mean, Altiora is Sonics with their old roster, but obviously that you blew up your roster. I mean, the fact that DG wasn't the team to make it out of NA is super embarrassing. And I honestly think that Rent Free making the finals and people having, being fans of Sweater and Yardy and stuff like that, combined with Altiora being the, a Canadian representative, was a real boon because Disrupt in no universe should have lost that. I don't know how much you agree with me, Seth, but from the way that I see these teams play, the fact that
Disrupt, like, when they heard that we weren't playing with our roster, like even though we did play, we had one scrim, right? So like we went into that not expecting to win. Honestly, we're going to try our best, but there was no way we should beat teams that were practiced for a year. So the fact that Disrupt like somehow blew that opportunity to make Invitational was like super embarrassing for them. I'm pretty sure they're going to make roster changes. I don't know if it's because of that, but yeah, that was like the cash flow had to be fuming because that was like basically a gimme. And they, no offense to Beast Coast, because Beast Coast announced during this podcast actually that they're going to be in NAL, but they lost to the team that got second place in Challenger League, and they're a Pro League team. Obviously, that's pretty embarrassing to go to Enva.
Yeah, I mean, I think DG got the fact that DG lost, I think like I said, it got overshadowed by the fact that people liked Rent Free and they were in the finals, and that Altiora ended up ultimately winning because obviously people were pumped, like, oh, a Canadian team made it. This is super cool. And the Altiora guys, obviously they had like this meteoric rise over the last couple months to win the Canada finals and then also win the qualifiers. So like it was cool. And then, you had Beast Coast and the finals were Altiora the Altiora Beast Coast were the finals. Rent Free was in the semifinals. I don't really think anybody was like super fans of Beast Coast. They're obviously in NAL for those that are listening to this podcast.
For sure.
Sorry?
I was going to say, I don't think anybody gave Beast Coast like a chance at winning that game.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought that it was going to be either Rent Free or DG to make it. I thought those were going to be the two teams, and then Altiora Beast Coast were the finals, and I was kind of surprised. But yeah, I don't know how DG has escaped public scrutiny over that, because it is frankly, it's kind of embarrassing that they didn't win.
All their fans are like bots, right? Because they have a fake follower account on Twitter. So like, what fans would actually be upset? All their fans are fake.
I think there's a lot of other things going on in NA as well that have taken the attention.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, or just dropping left and right takes some of the pressures off, I guess.
True that. Yeah. That's true. Not obviously touching on their social media and their Twitter account. But I will say from NA, it should have been DG. When I look at LATM, I think INTZ is the answer there, or Estral. I don't know if Estral should have been there. I don't know if they're ready. And frankly, if they had made it, I think they would have gone out in groups no matter what. It's always cool to see like a new region go, like obviously when APAC started showing up, it was great. But then you had Ines and Mantis FPS as the two teams in Sao Paulo, and they won a combined, one round between the two teams or something like that. Like, obviously that's not great. It would have been cool to see Estral there, but at the same time, I don't think they go anywhere. They get bounced in the groups, just as I honestly think Altiora is going to as well, for the same reason. From APAC, I'll also echo Xavier. I wanted to see Fnatic there. It feels weird to not have Fnatic be present. And I mean, my heart of hearts says I would have loved to have seen you be there. But you're playing on a lot of ping from Australia. You got a weird set of circumstances going on. Fnatic wasn't good enough to make it. And I don't think if you had to put them there, I mean, is there a chance you make it out of the groups? Yeah, honestly, I think if Fnatic just shows up to this event from an invite, I don't think they're one of the 4 teams to go home. But I don't think you make a deep run. I think that Xavier would have been a cool inclusion. And then Europe is really tough, man. Like, I don't think Mkers should have made it. Do I think that Tempera deserved it? Not necessarily. Like, it's so hard, because I think Navi could have gone. I think Navi's got some serious issues, but I think Navi could have gone, and I think they could have done well. I think that Vitality could have gone, and I think that they would have also done well. And I think both Navi and Vitality being present would place better than Mkers. I think that almost any of the EUL teams going probably would end up with a better result than Mkers as well. But EU is really hard, because I mean, EU looks like the deepest region still right now. So who knows?
The only way we would have made it is if God used his hand, shoved it up my ass, and used me as a puppet, because we played like fucking garbage and we had no chance of getting there.
You into that kind of thing?
I mean, as long as it's your hand.
That's not what I asked. Are you implying I'm God?
No, just the fisting part.
I think that's the first time the word fisting has been used on our podcast, so excellent. Really appreciate that.
You were the one who dived deeper into it.
No,
Just like into me.
All right. Well, that basically that basically concludes the show. Everybody, you can say goodbye. Where can people find you? What do you want to say? What's your parting words before we conclude the show? Let's start with Supr, and then we'll just go Supr, Meli, Dizzle, Fabian. Your outro, please. Where can people find you? And parting words for the fans.
Twitch.tv/Supr.
All right. That's it. Okay, Meli, you're up. You can, Meli, by the way, you can say more, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Just want to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this 6 on 6. It's really cool to have the chance to speak in my bad English. And you guys can check my socials. It's a little bit difficult for non-English, for non-Portuguese person, but it's André Meligeni TV. André Meligeni TV. You can check me out. And Twitter, Instagram, but in Twitch, I'm just Meligeni. And that's it. Thank you.
Do you want to say something to your fans in Portuguese, by the way? You don't need to say it in English. You can happily speak Portuguese.
Ok. Valeu todo mundo que chegou aí. Eu sei que muita gente estava aí no chat falando com a gente. Eu estava dentro do chat o tempo todo. Estava bem divertido, bem engraçado. E vamos lá. Vamos partir para cima de Six Invitational aí. Vamos ver se a gente consegue buscar esse título pra gente finalmente. Tamo junto. Valeu. That's it.
I didn't understand a word. I don't think any of us understood a word, but I'm glad.
I agree with all of it.
Thank you very much, Meli. Honestly, it was really nice to have you on here. Dizzle, your turn.
Thank you.
I guess Twitter, at Dizzle with a J. That'd be the best place. Maybe go show some love to our Fnatic Japan account as well, at Fnatic_JP.
Okay. And last but not least, Fabian, and you cannot speak Swedish. You can only speak English because I know you're going to say something awful
racist,
in Swedish.
Isn't it?
So
I don't. Why is that?
because I trust that Meli in Portuguese is not going to say anything bad. I know that if Fabian speaks Swedish, it's not going to be good. So I do not trust him to speak in Swedish.
Wow, I expected more of you, Parker.
No, you didn't. You did not expect more of me.
Swedicism.
Honestly, I think somebody needs to clip that and send it to
Yeah.
Ubisoft. That's actually messed up.
I don't mind him speaking Swedish. I know he's going to go off the rails, and I'm trying to not get us in trouble. So that's exactly why I'm
We've
not letting him.
already talked about a very specific sort of sexual interaction. You think it can get any worse?
You can talk about fisting in English, but he can't talk in Swedish.
I didn't want to talk about fisting in the first place.
You're the
talking
one
about it right now. You're still talking.
And you're the one who led it down there as well. You asked if I was into it.
That's not how I meant it. I didn't mean it about me.
So you're asking him about fisting with someone else?
No, I'm telling you it's somebody else doing it with him, not with me.
Yeah, exactly. You want to know about
I do
people
not
fisting?
want to be involved in that.
You keep talking about fisting.
All right, Fabian, you can fucking speak Swedish if you want. I don't give a shit. Just say what
No,
I
I'm
need
not
to
going to
say.
speak Swedish. Just Google me. That's it. I'm the best player in the world. Just Google me.
Amazing.
Hell of a way to end the show. Forever. This will be the last episode, and we will never have another one ever again. That's it. Gentlemen, it was a real pleasure having you on. 3 of you have been on here before. Dizzle, it is always great to talk to you. Thank you very much for waking up at 4 a.m. your time, as the show went live at 5 a.m. where you live. I think that is a huge commitment, obviously. Fabian, it's always great to hear your opinions, because you, just like Seth, are incredibly unfiltered, and both of you are going to give very honest conversation and very honest thoughts on all of these players and teams. Seth, you bring an insight that is missing from a lot of conversations about NA. I appreciate it a lot. And Meli, you are one of the nicest people in the entire scene, and more people who speak English need to be able to hear what you have to say, because they are missing out by not speaking with you. So my hope is that you made yourself a lot of English speaking fans, because you've been around forever, and You absolutely deserve it. So with that, that's the show. All of our socials are going to be down in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube, as always, like, subscribes. They really help us out. I'm going to try to do another 6-on-6 with Troy this time after the Six Invitational is done. But until then, we're going to go back on a break because there's an important event coming up and none of us are going to be able to commit the time that we want to it. Other than that, thank you very much for tuning into our 21st episode. It was a real pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are. Stay safe and enjoy the Six Invitational. We'll see you then.